The Ortezo Grand Ducal Castle stands tall, shrouded in dark energy born from ancient wars. This ghost castle emits a gloomy atmosphere, perpetually hidden from the sun's warm rays. Only those of the Ortezo bloodline, immune to darkness and possessing powers, can live here. A small, determined foot enters the terrifying castle, signaling a significant change is coming. Irie puffs out her cheeks, psyching herself up for the challenge that lies ahead. Standing before the massive castle doors, the young girl announces her official arrival. A cheerful introduction reveals Irie as the little hero destined to save the gloomy castle. The story shifts south to the Melissa Marchioness estate, where everything originally began. The Marchioness of Melissa cries dramatically, fussing over her precious baby granddaughter with intense emotion. Arie Ortezo, the youngest princess, looks slightly overwhelmed by her grandmother's loud and frantic behavior. Amidst a shower of roses, the young girl reassures her worried grandmother that she feels fine. The frantic grandmother asks if the child is ill while the doctor prepares his diagnosis. The doctor reports that Irie simply overate, while the young girl lies back looking very full. The grandmother insists her starving baby only ate 10 turkey legs, ignoring the doctor's rational explanation. As Arie rests, her grandmother mentions that the child has been hearing strange, mysterious sounds lately. Arie reflects on the mysterious voice that has been calling her a world-saving purifier since yesterday. A shadowy force promises to reveal the past and future to help her save the world. The girl is left confused, wondering about the true meaning of the past and her mission. Erin recalls her past life in Korea as a justice-loving 9-year-old trained in martial arts. After losing her grandmother, Erin lived in an orphanage and protected other children's snacks from bullies. The young martial artist delivers a fierce kick, demanding respect for the discipline of the sport. Narrative text highlights her status as a Taekwondo junior black belt and a recognized team captain. Orphanage children cheer for their strong sis after she successfully recovers their stolen treats. Erin recalls finding a peculiar novel that her teacher loved, sparking a major life change. A decorative transition leads into the specific details of the novel that would become her reality. The book's title is revealed as The Monster Family of the Northern Snowfields, detailing a grim fate. In the story, Arie is a villain's daughter who lost her mother to northern dark energy. After her mother's death, she was sent to live with her maternal relatives in the south. A hidden secret is revealed. Irie is the world's only purifier capable of cleansing dark energy. Neither the girl nor those around her realize the incredible potential of her hidden spiritual powers. As time passed, the dark energy spread from the north, consuming everything in its path. Servants, townspeople, and even Arie herself were eventually overtaken by the spreading evil force. The world eventually perished, bringing a tragic end to everyone, including her beloved grandmother. Irie realizes the book she read was no mere story, but an impending, dangerous future. The narrative warns that this tragic fate will soon come to pass if nothing is changed. Arie wakes up dazed while her grandmother reveals she was unconscious for only 10 minutes. The grandmother yells at the doctor to be quiet, despite his reports of the girl's calm breathing. The Marchioness orders Arie to drink 10 liters of milk to fix her supposed frailty. Sitting up in bed, the young girl questions what is happening to her current reality. Arie looks around her room, wondering if the prophetic vision she experienced was only a dream. She confirms her identity as the reincarnated 9-year-old Erin, realizing she is now a book character. Looking out from the balcony, Irie processes the shock of being the world's sole purifier. She recalls the grim ending of the world and her own demise in the original story. The young girl realizes she and her grandmother are destined to die if the story continues. During a meal, Irie frantically eats while her grandmother watches her with a confused, questioning look. She vows to act with the strength of a martial artist rather than a helpless child. Irie gazes at her grandmother, filled with a secret determination to protect her from their fate. A flashback shows the grandmother feeding a young Irie, illustrating their deep and loving bond. The grandmother proudly dresses a round, floral-clad chibi Irie in warm, hand-knitted winter clothes. The two walk together happily, surrounded by blossoms as the grandmother holds her granddaughter's hand. Irie expresses her heartfelt desire to live a long, happy life alongside her beloved grandmother. Pointing to herself with pride, Irie tells her grandmother she might be a world-saving hero. A vibrant thought bubble declares her duty as the purifier is to save the world. The grandmother encourages her hero dreams by feeding her meat to ensure she grows tall. Clad in a red traveling cape and pink bag, the young girl prepares for her journey. Her grandmother warns of northern dangers, offering a soybean cookie as a bribe to stay. A close-up reveals that the offered soybean powder cookie is actually the girl's favorite snack. Struggling against the sweet temptation, Irie insists that saving the world is more important than cookies. The silver-haired woman asks why her granddaughter insists on leaving her for the dangerous north. The young girl pauses thoughtfully, her expression showing she is considering her grandmother's emotional plea. Inner thoughts reveal Eri knows her grandmother cannot follow her because she lacks resistance to darkness. Despite the heartfelt protests of her grandmother, the small girl runs off with her cape fluttering. The grandmother watches the departing child with a look of deep, silent concern and hidden knowledge. A close-up focuses on the grandmother's color as she remains silent in the girl's absence. A dark-haired woman appears in a hazy memory, reminding someone not to forget an important detail. The grandmother strokes Ayeri's head, mentioning her daughter's final words while worrying for the child's safety. Narrative text questions if Eri can truly cleanse the North's dark energy and save the world. Now in the North, the young girl is shown bundled in a thick white bear hood. Servants rush about, shouting orders to wrap the child tighter and bring protective magic tools immediately. The maid and butler gush over how cute the pouting girl looks in her bear suit. A large, jagged bubble reflects the girl's utter confusion about the chaotic situation around her. Dark text explains that the castle was once reserved only for descendants powerful enough to resist darkness. Further text notes that these strong descendants were the only ones permitted in the ducal castle. Narrative text highlights that while the gifted children had privileges, they also presented a major problem. A loud crash echoes as staff members scream about a broken, highly treasured family possession. Servants frantically chase unruly children, begging them to stop running and put down dangerous weapons. An ornate frame notes that every child in the family was a reckless, self-centered little troublemaker. The text concludes that the wild, out-of-control children were no different from little monsters. Boots walk across the floor as the narrative explains this was the long-standing status quo. A maid asks the knights what is happening as a small visitor arrives at the castle. Two armored knights flank a small, silver-haired girl who has come to visit the family. The young girl stands politely with her hands folded, appearing remarkably calm and well-behaved. Smiling brightly, the girl introduces herself as 5-year-old Airi Ortezo to the gathered castle staff. A panel shows the usual northern greeting is "get lost," leaving the polite servants completely speechless. The butler and maid shout in shock at the girl's uncharacteristically polite and formal introduction. The staff asks if she came from the south alone, and she cheerfully confirms she used magic. Eri asks for the family head, but the butler explains the Grand Duke is hunting monsters. Internal thoughts show the butler's fear that the girl will now throw a violent northern tantrum. Surprising everyone, Airi calmly accepts the situation and decides she will simply wait for his return. The young girl performs a perfect 90-degree bow, formally placing herself in the servant's care. Floating text notes that her silver hair and chirpy voice are completely alien to the North. A close-up highlights the girl's impeccably polite manners as she smiles softly at the staff. The servants are blinded by her radiance, wondering if an angel has finally arrived in the North. The two maids gush over the girl, calling her a precious little dumpling and admiring her cuteness. Eri struggles in her bear suit, demanding to know why she is the only one wearing it. The scarred-head lady-in-waiting politely informs the young girl that removing the protective suit is impossible. Recalling school lessons about bullying, Airi wonders if she is being excluded from the very beginning. The girl pouts about being left out, while the lady-in-waiting explains it is due to her lack of immunity. Eri questions what immunity means as the lady-in-waiting points to the black fog outside the window. The Grand Northern Castle stands tall, heavily obscured by a thick, ominous veil of dark blue mist. A child learns dark energy harms the young and those without immunity must wear protection. The purple-eyed girl stares blankly ahead as she processes her new restrictive circumstances in the North. She realizes she must wear the suit and leave in a week while servants watch anxiously. The girl claims she is fine and dismisses the staff while a man urges her to rest. The servants weep as they leave the room, hoping the little lady stays strong while resting. After the servants depart, the little girl sits alone in the large, silent room with a sigh. She suddenly feels empowered by her junior black belt status, vowing to act like a true martial artist. Rejuvenated, the girl stands up determinedly and decides to retrieve a specific item from her belongings. A small hand reaches into a pink bag and pulls out a folded piece of parchment. The young girl focuses intently on the paper she just pulled from her pink travel bag. She sits on a massive, ornate bed with her bag and paper nearby, looking small and alone. The girl recalls a happy memory with her grandmother, feeling a sudden wave of homesickness and longing. She reflects on the unsettling reality of sleeping alone for the very first time in her life. Despite the loneliness, she stays optimistic, knowing that arriving in the North is a positive first step. Clenching her fist, she plans to meet the Grand Duke, reveal her hero identity, and seek assistance. A look of fierce resolve crosses her face as she prepares for the challenges ahead of her. The little lady eventually falls fast asleep on the large bed, surrounded by soft, glowing light. The scene shifts to the northern front line, where the monster patrol remains on high alert during combat. A spray of red blood covers the scene as a battle rages against the northern monstrosities. A knight in black armor swings a dark blade with lethal precision amidst a shower of blood. The black-armored knight pauses as an ally calls out to him with urgency during the combat. A messenger reports that a communication has arrived from the castle while the Grand Duke stands over a kill. The knight is informed that Lady Irie has traveled to the north to see him personally. The Grand Duke remains silent, his expression hidden behind his dark, imposing helmet as he absorbs the news. He questions whether his daughter has truly come all this way to find him in this place. The subordinate asks if his lord should return immediately to greet the lady after her long journey. Removing his helmet, the Grand Duke notes she wants an audience but calls the north a dying land. He wonders why she would choose to come to such a dangerous place of all possible locations. The messenger admits he is uncertain of her reasons for coming but confirms her arrival at the castle. With a cold expression, the Grand Duke commands his subordinate to tell the girl to go back. While her father rejects her visit, the young girl remains blissfully asleep in her warm, safe bed. The Grand Duke firmly declares that he will not grant his daughter an audience under any circumstances. He vows never to meet with the child, as dark chains and the story title appear. Dark energy blankets the north after years of relentless warfare against a never-ending swarm of monsters. Declan has accumulated lethal levels of dark energy within his body, reaching a critical stage of erosion. He reflects that even the immune struggle to stay near him, and an unprotected child would perish. Believing he belongs in the darkness, the cursed man accepts his isolation as a necessary burden. Declan's red eyes betray his exhaustion and the heavy toll that dark energy takes on his mind. He orders the messenger to tell the castle he will continue hunting monsters for the time being. He laments that he will never know how much his daughter has grown or her current appearance. Walking away from his duties, he resigns himself to the fact that he may never see her. His resolve hinges on the hope that nothing unexpected occurs within the walls of the castle. The following morning, the young girl wakes up and expresses shock at a sudden unfolding situation. She reacts with disbelief to a new discovery that seems to challenge her expectations for the day. A maid asks what is wrong while the girl internally screams that the situation is a complete disaster. Arriving at the castle the previous day, she now notices ominous black mist swirling around the servants. She observes a strange, faint mist drifting specifically around some of the ladies-in-waiting in the castle. The girl reaches out to touch the dark energy, finding the phenomenon exceptionally strange and concerning. She's alarmed to find that her touch has no effect and the mist does not dissipate. She grabs the maid's hand and asks if she feels anything unusual from her own touch. Ari is frustrated that the dark mist remains in place despite her physical touch. The young girl experiences a crisis of faith regarding her supposed role as a purifier. She slumps dejectedly into a large armchair as her situation continues to worsen. The scarred butler reports the Grand Duke's delay and urges the girl to rest. Ari fears she will be sent home without meeting her father or purifying anything. A simple text panel marks a transition as the narrative moves to the next beat. The girl visualizes a catastrophic end for herself and the entire world in her head. Chibi Ari spins in frantic circles while desperately searching for a way to succeed. She recalls a childhood memory of watching her favorite anime hero, the mighty Regent. A defeated villain questions Regent on how he could possibly possess such incredible strength. Regent declares his superiority over villains and prepares to reveal the secret of his power. The hero reveals that his strength comes from the support of his loyal friends. Inspired by the memory, Irie realizes she must find a powerful ally of her own. The girl decides she must summon a specific powerful friend hidden within the north. She recalls a legendary tree where an incredibly powerful entity lies sleeping in wait. The scene transitions to the dark, imposing exterior of the castle under a night sky. A butler and a maid are surprised to find the little lady awake and active. Ari stands before the servants, looking remarkably determined despite the late hour. The servants ask why she is awake and offer to keep her entertained for today. Irie requests permission to take a walk through the garden located inside the castle walls. The staff expresses hesitation, noting that it is currently far too late for a walk. She uses a pleading expression and clasped hands to sway the servants to her side. The servants are completely overwhelmed by her innocence and find it impossible to refuse her. They happily agreed to accompany her, fully charmed by her polite and well-mannered behavior. Irie smiles triumphantly to herself, having successfully manipulated the staff with her adorable appearance. A narrative box explains that being polite makes workers do whatever you ask of them. They walk together toward the garden while the girl focuses on finding the legendary tree. Despite the garden's vast size, the servants announce that they have finally arrived. The servants stop in their tracks as the little lady looks ahead with wide eyes. A massive, ancient tree stands alone in the center of the dark castle garden clearing. Eri realizes with shock that there is only one solitary tree in this entire area. The servants suggest exploring the other side of the garden, but the girl stops them. Eri suddenly claims to have a brilliant idea to create a moment for herself alone. She suggests a game of hide and seek and tells the servants to go and hide. They enthusiastically agree to play while she stands by the tree and begins counting aloud. As the servants depart, she stops her count and prepares to begin her secret ritual. The scene focuses on the empty stone stairs as the garden becomes silent and still. A formal text box identifies the landmark as the beech tree of the Ortezo family. Narration explains that a beast can be summoned by an Ortezo descendant at this location. Eri begins her invocation, calling upon the great summoned beast and its mighty ancient power. The young girl concentrates with her eyes closed, pouring her willpower into the summoning ritual. She commands the hidden entity to reveal itself in the form she knows it takes. The garden remains completely unresponsive, leaving the girl standing alone in the heavy silence. Confused by the lack of response, she wonders if a more complex chant is required. She frantically tries different phrases and poses, hoping to trigger the summoning of her friend. The servants' voices drift through the garden, asking if she is coming to find them. In a desperate panic, she shouts a chaotic mix of fictional spells at the ancient tree. She makes one last loud and determined call for her powerful friend to come out. A terrifying mass of dark energy suddenly manifests within the tree, shocking the little lady. A deep voice from the dark void recognizes her as a descendant of Ortezo blood. The dark void introduces itself as the Ortezo family's summoned beast, seeking a physical form. The entity promises to be a powerful ally and take any shape the girl desires. Looking up with pure wonder, the young girl prepares to witness the legendary manifestation. Her stomach growls and she realizes her nervousness has made her crave a delicious cookie. She tries focusing on the summon, imagining the beast as an incredibly terrifying cosmic dragon. Closing her eyes, she begs the entity to appear in a cool and impressive manner. The spirit accepts the contract with the Ortezo bloodline, finalizing the pact amidst the darkness. A brilliant explosion of white light consumes the garden as the summoning ritual reaches completion. Eri waits with bated breath. A sparkling light descends, signaling the arrival of her ally. A small, defiant gingerbread man manifests in the light, striking a very heroic and bold pose. The cookie celebrates his newfound freedom, shouting triumphantly that his ancient seal is finally broken. Staring in stunned silence, the little girl questions if this snack is truly her legendary beast. The narrative highlights the creature's adorable appearance, specifically noting his tiny, sweet chocolate eyes. Despite her confusion, Eri offers a warm greeting to her new friend with a bright smile. The gingerbread man formally addresses his contractor, though the introduction feels somewhat less than legendary. The cookie suddenly panics upon realizing his limbs are now stubby, doughy, and comically short. He screams in outrage, demanding to know why he has been manifested as a mere cookie. Eri looks completely innocent and baffled, claiming she did nothing to cause this edible transformation. The cookie reminisces about his past as a mighty dragon serving the first Ortezo head. He continues his boastful history, recalling his time as a magnificent phoenix serving a swordmaster. Pointing a doughy arm at her, he demands to know her thoughts during the summoning ritual. Ayuri sheepishly admits that her intense hunger made her think exclusively about wanting a cookie. The former legendary beast is devastated that a moment of hunger ruined his magnificent physical form. The gingerbread man wails in despair while Ayuri watches his dramatic meltdown from a distance. Following the chaotic ritual, Ayuri finally returns to her castle chambers with her oblivious attendants. Looking out the window, the scene shifts back to the room where the cookie sulks. Eri tries to comfort her dejected new friend, telling him not to feel so downcast. She cheerfully explains that cookies are wonderful because they can be both sweet and savory. The gingerbread man is terrified by the hungry, sparkling look in the little girl's eyes. Sighing at his fate, the cookie asks for the specific reason he was summoned here. Eri strikes a confident pose, declaring her grand ambition is for them to save the world. The tiny cookie stares at her with deep skepticism, questioning her ability to do anything. She insists she is a hero, prompting the cookie to ask about her actual combat abilities. Ayuri proudly demonstrates her martial arts training, citing her skills in pumse and active sparring. The cookie laments that he has gone from being a mighty ally to a simple babysitter. Ayuri reveals she possesses one more hidden power that she has yet to fully demonstrate. A hush falls over the room as the girl prepares to reveal her mysterious second gift. She explains that she is the chosen purifier destined to save the world from darkness. Eri confesses that despite her title, she has absolutely no idea how to use purification magic. The cookie offers to help by checking her current stats to see her true potential. He confirms his role is to help his contractor grow into the strongest person alive. Concentrating his energy, the gingerbread man begins the process of analyzing the girl's spiritual power. A glowing blue system window appears, displaying Irie's name and her inherent purification power levels.
Irie reacts with alarm to the cookie's shocked expression as he views her stat window.
The display focuses on the purification level, showing a very low number of filled boxes. The cookie bluntly informs her that her current purification power is exceptionally small and weak. He explains that this specific power is an innate talent that cannot be improved through training. Using a chalkboard, he outlines the 5 levels of purification, ranging from seed to salvation. He delivers the crushing news that she is ranked at the very bottom of the first level. Irie is frozen in a state of pure shock and disbelief at her pathetic power ranking. Cookie peers closely at the girl, sensing a hidden power resonating deep within her soul. The gingerbread man excitedly announces he has discovered a massive, legendary ability hidden inside Irie. A magnificent golden magic circle manifests before the girl, radiating a powerful and ancient celestial energy. Irie looks on in confusion, questioning the meaning and purpose of the glowing ring of purification. The intricate celestial seal glows brilliantly, representing a rare and potent form of ancient purification magic. Cookie explains that consistent use of her low-level purification could eventually make her legendary and unique. A warm vision shows happy servants laughing together with a cheerful, younger version of Irie. The gingerbread man praises the girl's extraordinary ability, looking quite impressed with her vast latent potential. Inspired by her new purpose, Irie looks ahead with a determined and glowing expression of hope. Cookie strikes a bold and heroic pose, ready to help his contractor fulfill her grand destiny. The duo celebrates their official partnership with a loud, enthusiastic shout of triumph and pure joy. Night falls over the castle as narration marks their first great step towards saving the world. The following morning, Irie walks through the vast, empty halls of the cold stone castle. Perched on her shoulder, Cookie advises meeting the Grand Duke to secure their stay here. Carrying her tiny companion, the girl prepares to face the formidable and busy head of the household. Irie expresses uncertainty about how to gain an audience with the elusive and powerful Grand Duke. An older, distinguished man in formal attire approaches, holding a thick stack of official castle documents. The head butler offers a polite and formal greeting to the young lady as they cross paths. Irie identifies the imposing man as the head butler and wonders if he can provide assistance. The little girl looks up expectantly at the tall professional servant standing directly before her. He explains that the papers he carries contain the strict regulations governing the entire castle's daily operations. The document states that all troops must return immediately in the event of an emergency. Irie ponders the meaning of the emergency protocol, her mind beginning to formulate a clever plan. The butler observes the knights gathering for their morning assembly in the courtyard far below them. A purple-haired knight commands the attention of his troops during their daily ritual of morning reporting. Hearing the knight mention reporting emergencies to the Duke, Irie has a sudden, brilliant realization. She recalls her grandmaster scolding her for eating snacks, linking causing trouble to receiving immediate attention. The girl realizes that children causing trouble always get the attention of the adults in charge. She concludes that creating a major incident will force the Grand Duke to return home immediately. Irie calls out to Cookie, her eyes glinting with a mischievous and very determined new plan. She acknowledges that while good kids should behave, desperate situations require some minor bad behavior. The girl justifies her impending mischief as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good of humanity. Irie runs off with a burst of energy, eager to find the perfect spot for trouble. A small girl sits quietly on a velvet couch, waiting in the opulent castle reception room. Beside her, a young boy with messy hair cries inconsolably while sporting a fresh black eye. The head butler sighs deeply at the sight of the 2 distressed children in the parlor. The narrative shifts back 2 hours earlier to when Irie first began her outdoor exploration. Irie explains her plan to Cookie, insisting they must cause trouble to summon the Grand Duke. 2 maids look worried as the little lady insists on touring the supposedly haunted ghost castle. They warn her of the frightening and unpredictable occurrences that happen within the dark Ortezo grounds. Skulls suddenly rain from the sky, terrifying the maids while Irie looks on with calm interest. The servants suggest moving elsewhere, claiming the gloomy castle is no place for such a child. A maid warns that there is nothing worthwhile to see in the dull and dreary ghost castle. They note the oppressive cold and lack of sunlight compared to the warm, pleasant southern regions. Despite their warnings, Irie continues her walk with a bright and incredibly cheerful skip in her step. The maids are charmed by her presence, feeling that her brightness makes the dreary castle feel better.
Eri points toward a nearby building, asking the servants about its specific purpose and function.
They identify it as the education hall, the place where the family's children receive their daily lessons. The maids look apprehensive as a bell rings, signaling the end of the current study session. Massive doors swing open as the students begin to exit the hall after their long morning classes.
The maid urges the little lady to leave now that classes have ended for the day. Eri notices a quiet area and wonders if there is any trouble to find here.
The young girl's eyes sparkle with sudden excitement as she spots something interesting nearby.
From a distance, a brown-haired boy corners another student against a stone castle wall. The boy smirks while demanding that the other student hand over all of his belongings immediately.
A memory shows a bully threatening to strike a child for every coin found during a search.
Ayuri heroically jumps into the scene, shouting for the older boy to stop his bullying behavior. The bully demands to know who she is, while Eri confronts him about his mistreatment of Changu. The brown-haired boy smugly claims he is not bullying, but simply collecting a bit of money.
He dismisses her as a commoner, assuming her protective suit means she lacks any real power. The boy tells her to get lost while the maids identify her as a member of Ortezo.
The maids watch in shock as the little girl prepares to take a physical stand. Era's gaze sharpens with a fierce and competitive light as she prepares to fight.
The boy identifies himself as Schultz, a distant relative of the prestigious Grand Duke's bloodline.
Cookie whispers to his contractor that the boy's lineage is vastly inferior to her own status. Schultz sneers at the small girl, confident that his family name will intimidate her into leaving. Shouting for her to step aside, Schultz lunges forward to push the little girl away.
Irie strikes a martial arts pose, declaring she will teach the rude boy some proper manners.
Schultz is confused by her words, while Eri realizes he probably doesn't understand high-level concepts. Schultz grows indignant that a tiny child would dare to speak to him with such boldness. Enraged, Schultz prepares to attack while the terrified maids scream for him to stop at once.
Ayuri gathers her focus, ready to deliver a disciplined counterattack against the aggressive older boy.
She prepares to deliver a physical lesson to the bully who refuses to show respect. A memory of her master reminds her to always step forward when defending what is right. Irie internally reaffirms her commitment to the teachings of her martial arts master. Shouting a final warning about respect, the little girl prepares her most powerful strike.
With incredible speed and precision, Irie delivers a flying kick directly to the bully's face.
The scene shifts to a distinguished man with a monocle who introduces himself as Peter. Narration reveals Peter was a former assassin who now serves as the loyal Ortezo head butler. Peter observes the staff's newfound cheerfulness and worries that the castle's strict discipline is fading. He attributes this sudden change in atmosphere to the arrival of the youngest princess. Peter believes his sharp eyes can see through any schemes the little girl might be planning. He suspects Lady Eri is just as troublesome as the other unruly children in the castle.
A servant rushes to inform the butler that he is needed urgently to handle a crisis.
Peter sighs, assuming his suspicions about the girl's troublemaking nature have just been confirmed. In the reception room, Peter sits across from a crying Schultz and a calm, composed Eri. Schultz wails that the girl hit him, prompting Peter to ask for a detailed explanation. The boy throws a tantrum on the couch, blaming the head butler for the entire incident.
Peter politely apologizes for the chaos while privately noting that the boy always blames others.
Irie stands up to defend the butler, taking full responsibility for the argument with Master Schultz. Peter is struck with absolute disbelief that a child would actually take responsibility for her actions. Peter stands frozen as he realizes he is dealing with a very different kind of child. After years of dealing with troublemakers, Peter is deeply moved by the girl's extraordinary manners. Schultz rudely tells the girl to leave and go find her own supposedly worthless parents. Peter explodes in anger at the boy's extreme disrespect towards someone of the girl's high standing. The butler is horrified that someone would dare speak so insultingly to an Ortezo princess. Peter sternly warns that the boy's insults have turned this into an incredibly serious diplomatic matter. Schultz is stunned by her title, while Peter declares the girl was in grave danger of harm.
Peter announces that the Grand Duke himself must now discuss this incident with Schultz's mother.
Peter expresses surprise that the girl understands the social consequences of her public misconduct.
Eri eagerly asks if this situation will force the Grand Duke to return immediately.
The butler realizes her recent troublemaking was a clever scheme to summon her guardian. A close-up reveals the girl's quiet, hopeful gaze as she waits for more news. She nervously taps her fingers together, anticipating the success of her mischievous master plan. Peter recalls the girl asking to see the Grand Duke from the very first day. He imagines the child's heartbreak, picturing her weeping for her distant and busy father. The maids defend her actions, claiming she simply couldn't ignore someone being cruelly bullied. Moved to tears by her supposed devotion, the butler vows to reunite the family. A massive explosion marks the destruction of a monster base at the northern border. A knight in silver armor sighs in exhaustion after the intense and successful battle. The Grand Duke walks away from the flames as his troops confirm the area's safety. The silver-haired knight complains about the grueling forced march they have just completed. He suggests taking a rest, but the Duke's sudden movements stop him mid-sentence. Swirling dark energy begins to emanate from the Duke, causing alarm among his loyal knights. Haros, a purification mage, is introduced as he assesses the Duke's deteriorating condition. The mage urgently tells the Duke to sit for an immediate purification of the energy. Haros places his hands near the Duke to begin suppressing the volatile dark corruption. He warns that the buildup of dark energy has reached an extremely dangerous level. Haros explains that the Duke is nearing a point of total and irreversible physical erosion. The Duke closes his eyes, stoically accepting the reality of his own life-threatening condition. He recalls a vision of a young girl, his thoughts drifting back to the castle. The memory focuses on the delicate finery of the girl's dress, emphasizing his internal conflict. A knight named Raspin approaches with a report that just arrived from the home castle. He informs the group that an urgent matter involving Lady Aerie requires their attention. The Grand Duke is stunned to hear that the young girl caused a major incident. The report explains that the girl got into a physical fight with a relative.
Raspin notes that the head butler's message was uncharacteristically firm and insistent on return.
Declan worries the child might be hurt despite the report's lack of injury details. Raspin suggests that the Duke should return to the castle to check on her himself. The Duke refuses, fearing his dark energy will only harm a child from the south. He explains that even objects he touches become tainted and dangerous for others to handle. He believes forming a bond with her would only cause a problem given his fate. Haros warns him again that his body cannot hold out much longer against the energy. The mage points out that this may be his final chance to see her face. Raspin asks if he is truly staying, sensing the Duke's heart is already elsewhere. Declan considers if magic tools could protect the girl from the effects of his presence. He places his foot in the stirrup, preparing to mount his horse for the journey. Accepting the pull of his emotions, the Duke finally admits that he gives in. He mounts his horse and announces that he is heading back to Ortezo Castle. A determined look crosses the Duke's face as he prepares for the long ride back. The scene shifts to the following morning at the grand and imposing Ortezo Castle. A maid expresses her shock that the little lady caused trouble just to see Declan. Aerie stands happily in a new, incredibly fluffy white bear suit provided by the staff. A maid mentions they wrapped her up extra tight to ensure she stays warm. The girl is overjoyed that her plan to summon the Grand Duke was a success. Cookie excitedly notes that she is finally getting to meet her dad in person. Aerie's expression suddenly freezes as she processes the reality of the upcoming family reunion. A narrative prompt asks why her face has suddenly changed to one of intense realization. The girl finally remembers that the formidable Grand Duke is technically her new father. Aerie focuses on the word father as her heart beats with nervous anticipation. A memory shows a man shouting at a young Aerie for being in his way. The man in the memory cruelly dismisses the girl as if she were unwanted baggage. Dressed in her bear suit, Aerie compares her past parents to the unknown Grand Duke. She wonders if her new father will be genuinely happy to finally meet her. Cookie notices his contractor's hesitation and asks if she is feeling nervous about the meeting. The gingerbread man encourages her, declaring that she is destined to be a mighty hero. A memory shows a protective woman shouting that she will raise the girl herself. Aerie recalls the warm and kind smile of her grandmother from her previous life. Cookie strikes a confident pose as the scene returns to the castle's bright atmosphere. The head lady-in-waiting and the maids smile warmly at the adorable little princess. Aerie vows to protect everyone and live a happy life filled with delicious food. A close-up reveals the girl's wide, sparkling purple eyes as she prepares for the encounter. The maids are suddenly taken aback by a strange change in the surrounding air. The head lady-in-waiting notes that her body suddenly feels significantly lighter and more energized. Another maid gasps in surprise, claiming that her heart feels incredibly calm and peaceful. Cookie exclaims that Irie has unintentionally performed her very first successful purification of dark energy. Irie is completely shocked by the realization that she has used her hidden powers. The little girl shouts in surprise as she reacts to her own sudden magical success. Aerie flails her arms excitedly while the staff watches her with newfound awe and respect. Cookie congratulates her, noting that the staff has already opened their hearts to her light. The grand room is bathed in a brilliant light, reflecting the girl's pure inner energy. Cookie comments that the humans don't realize their dark energy was just purified by her. Peter the butler enters the room and addresses the young lady with his usual professional poise. The butler informs the bear-suited girl that it is time to prepare for her departure. Peter announces that the Grand Duke is approaching and will arrive at the castle shortly. An aerial view shows the vast, snowy courtyard of the castle as people begin gathering. Several knights attend to their horses in the courtyard as they prepare for the Duke. Declan stands stoically in black armor while a knight yells for him to be kind.
Holding a communication orb, Irie stands ready while Cookie tells her to stay relaxed.
The little girl stares ahead with a serious expression, focusing on the task at hand.
Aerie spots a distant figure and realizes that the man in armor is her father.
The narration confirms the arrival of Grand Duke Ortezo as he holds a matching orb. Looking across the courtyard, Aerie notes that the Duke is standing a great distance away. The lady-in-waiting explains they must communicate from afar because the Duke's dark energy is dangerous. Declan stares toward the castle with a silent, intense gaze from beneath his dark hair.
Aerie holds her communication tool tightly, preparing to speak to her guardian for the first time.
The small girl tentatively offers a greeting into the magical orb she holds in her paws.
Aerie shouts a loud greeting that startles both the Duke and the silver-haired knight nearby.
She boastfully declares her own strength, asking the Duke if he can sense her power. A handwritten plan outlines her goals to meet, win over, and stay with the Duke.
Irie strikes a heroic pose while holding her orb, fully committed to her master plan.
Declan wonders to himself if all modern children share the same dream of becoming heroes.
The girl insists she is a hero and claims she has urgent news to share. Cookie tells her to listen carefully and confirms she possesses powerful purification abilities. The gingerbread man explains that her power makes her naturally immune to the Duke's energy. Irie triumphantly holds her orb high, excited by the news of her own magical immunity. A large sound effect emphasizes the girl's sudden burst of confidence and excitement.
Declan remains skeptical of her claim, while Irie demands to take off her puffy suit.
The Duke refuses her request, and Cookie notes that the man doesn't believe her words.
Aerie considers trying to get closer to the Grand Duke to win him over effectively. The staff informs her that the Duke loves his sword, delicious food, and killing monsters. The little girl has a sudden realization about how to bond during luck. She imagines the Duke slaying beasts while she follows him as his heroic assistant. Aerie dreams of becoming a hero in the North, purifying every bit of dark energy. Holding her communication tool, the bare-suited girl asks for a personal tour of the castle.
Declan orders Raspin to give her a map, despite the knight's concerns about its value. The knight walks across the snowy courtyard to deliver the Duke's response to the child. Raspin presents the girl with a detailed map so she can explore the castle grounds herself. Aerie is devastated that her plan to walk with the Duke resulted in solo exploration. She realizes the Duke's legendary ironclad defense is preventing her from getting close to him.
Panicked, the girl shouts into her orb, pleading for him to wait just one moment. Declan stops and stares back with an intense, silent expression after hearing the child's outburst. Aerie stands in the snow, confused by the distance and lack of warmth from them.
Across the yard, the Duke and his knight wonder what was wrong with their gift.
The girl worries that she wasn't polite enough to earn the Duke's favor and attention. Dropping to her knees, Irie desperately begs the Duke to grant her request to stay. She boastfully claims she can purify energy and begs for more time in the North. Declan coldly tells her to get lost and orders her safe return to the South. The small girl's desperate cries echo through the air as the stoic Duke walks away. A floating chibi head reflects the girl's total shock and heartbreak at being rejected again. The scene shifts to a parlor where Schultz and his mother await their uncertain fate. Viscountess Dyra stands nervously, contemplating the social disaster her son's physical fight has caused. She worries that the Duke's early return will halt her family's efforts to expand influence.
Schultz sits grumpily on a couch, his face covered in bandages from his earlier brawl.
His mother stresses the gravity of the incident, while the boy remains defiant and unrepentant.
Dyra instructs her son to grovel and apologize to the Duke to save their status.
Schultz dismisses the danger, claiming the Duke doesn't care about a powerless child like Aerie. Declan enters with a burst of dark energy, interrupting the woman's boastful and dismissive talk.
Dyra thinks to herself that Schultz is right and the cold-blooded Duke won't care.
She believes a simple apology and pledge of loyalty will secure the Duke's easy forgiveness. The Duke's oppressive dark energy fills the room, making it difficult for the Viscountess to breathe.
Declan declares that his return is a good time to strictly tighten discipline in the North.
He immediately disbands the family's cavalry, leaving the woman to beg for mercy on the floor. The Duke leaves the meeting while the desperate woman's pleas continue to echo behind him.
Declan reflects on the circulating rumors that the young lady is powerless and non-immune.
He recalls a woman's soft voice advising him to give the children whatever they desire. The Duke contrasts those memories with Eris's loud, confident claims about her own powerful immunity. He considers the child's intense and singular desire to stay in the dangerous Northland. A close-up of the girl's large purple eyes highlights her deep hope and innocent determination. Narrative text explains the two distinct methods available to confirm a person's magical immunity. One method is using the ancient stone kept within the walls of the imperial palace. The castle's own measurement chamber was destroyed long ago, leaving the palace as the only option. Declan commands Raspin to relay his orders to finally reopen the castle's ability measurement chamber. A focused look at the Duke's eyes suggests he is beginning to believe the girl. The Duke spots a small gingerbread man lying neglected on the tiled floor of the hallway. Declan complains that the castle staff isn't keeping the hallways clean of strange, sugary debris. As the men walk away, Cookie springs to life, pleased with his successful infiltration plan. Aerie sits on her bedroom floor, surrounded by crayons and intently studying her new map. Cookie strikes a heroic pose, signaling that their master plan for the castle is moving forward. Cookie proudly announces that he successfully scouted the Grand Duke's recent activities for the girl. Aerie examines her map while the tiny gingerbread man leaps excitedly into the frame. The Cookie claims that the Duke has effectively handed her full control of the castle. Recalling the Duke's stern confrontation with Schultz's family, Cookie notes the man isn't actually evil. Aerie looks stunned as the gingerbread man suggests that the Duke was actually worried about her. She contrasts the distant Duke with her previous parents, feeling that he doesn't truly like her. Cookie hopes the two can find a way to get along in the snowy northern castle. The mood shifts as Cookie warns the Duke is dying from advanced, miraculous dark energy erosion. Aerie sits in quiet contemplation on the floor of her bedroom next to her small companion. Narrative text explains that the world's survival depends entirely on the Grand Duke's continued existence. The girl stares intently at her glowing blue orb, pondering the gravity of the Duke's condition. Seeing the Duke's isolation, she realizes her personal feelings are secondary to his urgent survival. Aerie accepts that he might never let her get close despite her desire to help him. Her eyes shine with resolve as she decides she simply cannot allow the Duke to die. Cookie points out that her currently weak purification powers make a direct approach nearly impossible. Reaching for her map, the girl reveals she has formulated a brand new strategy for success. Aerith's hand-drawn map displays various castle locations, from the infirmary to the Grand Garden. She imagines herself standing tall among the supportive castle staff in a bright, happy future. The girl dreams of consuming all dark energy to become a legendary 5-star purification mage. Cookie enthusiastically supports her ambition, believing her powers will grow through her dedicated efforts. Striking a heroic pose, Aerie declares that her new mission begins right here in the room. The gingerbread man looks skeptical as he watches the girl's sudden burst of intense motivation. Kitchen maids are startled when they hear a bright greeting from the castle's young lady. The staff is delighted that the little princess traveled all the way to visit them. Wearing a joyful expression, Aerie explains her great interest in seeing the castle's busy kitchen. Shelves filled with plates and bags of ingredients highlight the kitchen's well-stocked and organized state. A pan sits over a fire, cooking a steak topped with a perfectly fried egg. Cookie asks the girl why she decided to make the kitchen her very first destination. Aerie cheekily claims that delicious food is the strongest and most important force in the world. She plans to befriend the staff, eat well, and eventually bring tasty treats to the Duke. A close view shows a simple black shoe stepping onto the polished kitchen floor tiles. Noma introduces herself as the East head chef while placing a hand over her heart. The chef warns of kitchen hazards like open hearths, but the girl insists she is fine. Noma leads the way as Cookie whispers his concerns about the chef's seemingly prickly attitude. Another figure approaches, prompting a surprised reaction from the staff and the young girl. Nara, the West head chef, introduces herself with a polite smile amidst a flowery background. Aerie and Cookie are shocked to see two nearly identical chefs standing together in the kitchen. The girl realizes that Noma and Nara share the exact same facial features and freckles. It is revealed that the castle employs twin head chefs to manage the large estate's kitchens. Nara sternly tells her sister to stop loitering and get back to her proper work duties. Noma defiantly rejects the order, asserting her right to do whatever she pleases in the kitchen. An argument erupts over which sister was in charge of preparing the Grand Duke's breakfast. Aerie and Cookie watch in distress as the twin chefs engage in a loud, petty argument. Sensing the heavy tension, Aerie wonders if purifying this specific area will be too difficult. The girl suddenly pauses to sniff the air as a specific aroma catches her attention. Her eyes light up as she identifies the distinct nutty scent of a grainlish. 2 bowls of hearty, steaming grains sit on the wooden table, ready to be served. Aerie stands between the bickering twins, captivated by the delicious food prepared on the counter. Nira insists that grain dishes are the Duke's favorite, gesturing toward the bowl she made. Noma counters by presenting a strawberry cake, claiming the Duke actually prefers sweet treats instead. Nara and Noma argue over who knows the Duke better while Aerie and Cookie watch nearby. The kitchen maids apologize for the scene, but Aerie politely reassures them it is quite all right. Looking at the bickering twins, Irie recalls seeing similar neighborhood fights in her previous life. Eri observes the heavy atmosphere in the kitchen and notices the staff looking deeply troubled. A flash of inspiration strikes as the young lady's purple eyes widen with a new idea. The small girl clenches her fist, preparing herself to take action and intervene in the dispute. With a sudden burst of energy, Irie strikes a determined pose to catch everyone's attention. Standing tall, the little girl commands the room by loudly ordering everyone to look her way. The bickering stops instantly as the entire kitchen staff stares at the child on the chair. Irie looks directly at the twin head chefs and declares she has something important to say. With a confident smile, she announces her intention to purify all the dark energy in the kitchen. Irie launches into an enthusiastic praise of the lunch they prepared, calling it incredibly delicious. Using her praise attack strategy to calm their anger, Irie leaves the kitchen staff feeling utterly bewildered. The girl asks the twin chefs if they work together to create the wonderful meal. Nera and Noma are stunned to learn that the young lady correctly identified the healthy purslane herb. Eri explains the health benefits of the plant, claiming it acts as medicine for a long life. The twin chefs are taken aback by her knowledge and quickly agree with the child's points. Nera and Noma are completely charmed by the girl, praising her for being exceptionally clever. One chef offers Eri some bitter herbal tea, which the girl happily accepts with no hesitation. The staff is delighted as they serve the little lady various types of herbal tea to try. The mood in the kitchen brightens considerably as the maids encourage Irie to sample more drinks. Cookie realizes that the adults are weak to compliments and celebrates the success of the plan. The gingerbread man notices the chefs opening up but warns that the dark energy remains unpurified. Narrative text emphasizes that the mission is incomplete if the surrounding dark energy stays present. While eating a strawberry, Cookie warns Eri that she must strengthen her powers to help the Duke. Irie remains optimistic about her progress, refusing to believe the task is too difficult to accomplish. Sitting on the floor, the girl recalls her grandmother's advice about finding answers through deep thought. Eri analyzes the conflict between sweet-loving Noma and grain-focused Nera regarding the Duke's specific tastes. In a mental flashback, the two head chefs continue their intense standoff over their cooking styles. The girl ponders if there is a way to satisfy both chefs and open their hearts. A sudden realization hits the young lady, indicated by a bright exclamation of surprise and clarity. Eri is struck by a brilliant idea involving the very food that caused the initial argument. The scene shifts to the following morning in the busy, sunlit castle kitchen. Nera and Noma are back to their usual bickering, fighting over space and jurisdiction in the kitchen. The other maids sigh in exhaustion, noting that the twins are arguing once again this morning. Eri enters the kitchen with a cheerful greeting, startling the staff with her early arrival. With a bright smile, the young lady asks the head chefs for permission to use the kitchen. The twin sisters are caught off guard and stare blankly at the child's unexpected request. A bowl of prepared grains sits on the counter, signaling that Eri's cooking project is underway. Curious about her plan, Nera and Noma ask the young lady what she intends to cook. Eri specifically asks head chef Nera to help her by roasting the barley for the dish. Nera is pleased by Eri's interest in grain dishes and asks her about her preference. Gloating to her sister, Nera claims that grains are superior to sweets and fill the stomach properly. Eri giggles and agrees with the chef, furthering her plan to win over both of the sisters. The girl reveals a surprising twist, explaining that her grain-based dish will also be a sweet dessert. Noma looks skeptical and confused, wondering how a meal-focused grain can possibly become a dessert. Turning her attention to Noma, Irie asks for sugar and milk to complete her innovative recipe. The two chefs share a moment of quiet tea drinking, seemingly stunned by the child's creative ideas. A close-up of Irie's sparkling purple eyes reveals her inner determination to succeed with her plan. Irie fondly remembers a grandmother from her past life who provided her with this special knowledge. A glass of frothy brown liquid sits beside a bowl filled with toasted grains. Noma and Nera sample the dish, finding the sweet and filling flavor deeply satisfying. Noma notes the drink's southern style as the kitchen maids celebrate the culinary success. Noma grips a glass of the golden, bubbling grain drink in her hand. Nera reflects on the wonderful quality of the dish they have just prepared together. The twin chefs share a rare moment of peace, their faces glowing with professional pride. Eri excitedly pours an enormous portion of grains into a bowl for her next recipe. The twins and the girl cook in harmony, creating a bright and joyful atmosphere. A purple aura of dark energy dissipates as the kitchen staff experiences a purification. Irie looks forward with sparkly purple eyes and a determined, adorable expression. Reaching into her magical ring, Irie converts the captured dark energy into purification power. A complex golden crest glows brightly against a star-patterned light blue background. The kitchen is restored to a bright, warm state, now completely clear of tension. The twin chefs realize that the dark energy in the kitchen has finally vanished. Cookie the gingerbread man celebrates the girl's success, calling her an amazing little hero. A status window indicates that Irie is nearly ready to level up her powers. Aerie celebrates her small victory, feeling highly motivated to continue her training. Shaking her head, the girl reminds herself that a hero cannot be careless. Irie turns to the head chefs to ask them one final, very important question. Noma pauses her task to listen to the young lady's polite request.
Aerie asks what specific kinds of food the Grand Duke Ortezo enjoys the most.
Carts of covered silver trays are transported through the castle for the Duke's meal. Narration explains Aerie's deep desire to form a lasting bond with the Grand Duke.
The girl's feet scurry quickly across a stone floor toward the training area.
A bright, jagged speech bubble announces a cheerful greeting to everyone present.
The dark-haired Duke stands tall, his profile illuminated by the light of the courtyard.
Irie arrives at the training grounds proudly carrying 2 heavy silver food trays. The girl resolves to use this meal to finally bridge the distance between them. Irie greets the Duke while he is training, and he asks what brought her there. With a radiant smile, the young lady presents the healthy meal she prepared. The knights are charmed by Aerith's adorable appearance and her thoughtfulness toward the dupe. Irie presents a dish of purslane and mugwort, explaining its healthy properties. She also offers him a nutritious beverage made from ground barley and several beans. The Duke is baffled that a child has the mature taste buds of a grandmother. The dark-haired man takes a long, slow drink from the glass Irie offered him. He pauses mid-sip, his eyes widening slightly as he reacts to the drink's flavor. The Duke admits the drink is good, leaving the young girl looking completely stunned.
Aerie gleefully explains that the special beverage she created is called a grain shake.
Smiling slightly, the Duke asks if she truly prepared the entire meal herself. He jokingly asks what she put in it and if she poisoned the food.
Aerie is horrified by the joke, wondering if the Duke actually enjoys eating poison.
The Duke notes he is only 33 and dislikes being addressed as an elder.
Aerie uses her fingers to count his age, appearing confused by the high number. She looks up at him with awe, finding his age to be an amazing accomplishment. Raspin notes that Aerie's vocabulary is impressive for a child, as her honorifics grow elaborate.
Lord Raspin informs the Duke that the ability measurement chamber is ready for use. Aerie reacts with surprise, curious about the nature of the chamber they are visiting.
Surrounded by blue roses, Irie prepares to prove that she is immune to darkness.
The scene shifts to an empty, grand hallway featuring vaulted ceilings and diamond tiles. Aerie enters the massive ability measurement chamber, marveling at the scale of the room. Raspin explains the ability test will determine Aerie's immunity, while Aerie thanks her advisor. Raspin notes that proving her immunity will allow her to stay in the north longer. Aerie celebrates the success of her food-based plan to win over the Grand Duke. The advisor explains how Declan will test Aerith's circle to see if it repels power.
Aerie admits she didn't understand the explanation, but the advisor reassures her it'll be quick.
Raspin directs Irie to a specific spot in the chamber, and she cheerfully complies.
The brown-haired man reflects on the strain this measurement process puts on the person performing it.
Narration warns that Declan's current weakened state might cause his power to twist or fail. Declan prepares to begin the test while Raspin worries about the Duke's true physical condition. A close-up shows Declan's glowing red eyes as he focuses his power for the measurement. Declan extends his hand and red energy begins to flow toward the small girl waiting nearby. Aerie stands calmly as the red energy begins to swirl around her, signaling the test's start. Aerie wonders if the Duke is checking her strength, finding the sensation tingly and strange. The girl winks confidently, showing she is unaffected by the energy surrounding her tiny body. Brilliant light erupts within the chamber as the measurement reaches its peak intensity and focus. Declan maintains a stoic expression while his red energy continues to test the girl's immunity. The Duke appears strained, sweat appearing on his face as he exerts his formidable power. A close-up reveals the girl's wide, sparkling purple eyes as she experiences the Duke's energy. Irie notices something is wrong, wondering why the Duke looks so strained during the test. Declan's hand remains extended, but the red energy surrounding him begins to flicker and fade. The test concludes as the Duke and the girl stand silently across the large chamber. Declan addresses Aerie by her full name, startling the girl with his sudden, serious tone. Aerie looks up with curious eyes, waiting for the results of her ability measurement test. A close-up focus on the girl's feet reveals a moment of tension before the verdict. Declan confirms the results of his self-check, leaving Raspin shocked by the unexpected revelation. The Duke notes the strangeness of the situation, as immunity usually doesn't develop after birth. Aerie celebrates her newfound hero status, asking if the Duke saw her internal purification energy. Declan bluntly rates her power as beginner level, prompting the advisor to worry about her feelings. Aerie is amazed that even the mice in the castle have horned features, dismissing any concerns. Aerie excitedly asks if she can stay longer, and the Duke grants her another month. Overjoyed, Aerie runs through the halls cheering about her new life in the frozen north.
Declan reflects on how he had once resigned himself to never seeing the girl again.
The Duke clenches his fist, reminding himself that his touch could still potentially harm Aerie.
Declan orders Aerie to stop, warning her that getting too close remains a dangerous risk.
Aerie pouts, worried that her presence has become a minor annoyance to the dark-haired Duke.
Declan clarifies that he is only being careful to ensure his energy doesn't harm her.
The Duke finally gives his definitive permission for the little girl to stay with him.
Declan instructs Raspin to contact the Northern Magic Tower to begin Aerie's proper magic training.
Aerie beams with pure joy, her purple eyes sparkling at the prospect of her future. Narrative text confirms that Aerie has finally earned the Grand Duke's official permission to stay.
Aerie's grateful shout echoes over the castle towers as she thanks the Duke for his kindness.
An exterior view of the sunlit castle grounds shows the peaceful setting of her new home.
Text announces that the only thing remaining for Aerie is to become a mighty hero. A mountain of colorful gift boxes sits ready for the girl, symbolizing a warm welcome.
Raspin explains that Declan has been preparing and updating these gifts for 5 long years.
Now wearing a new dress, Aerie is mesmerized by the sparkling piles of presents before her. The staff expresses their genuine happiness that Lady Aerie will be staying at the castle. An illustration shows Aerie's old puff suit, noting she no longer needs the bulky garment.
Aerie looks back with a soft smile, now dressed in a beautiful light purple floral gown. Marveling at the abundance of gifts, Aerie explores the boxes while Declan watches from afar. Aerie is delighted by the custom accessories Declan picked up for her on his way. The little girl explores her new wardrobe, marveling at her perfectly sized, custom-made clothes.
Cookie the gingerbread man celebrates the fact that Aerie can finally stay at the castle. Aerie notes the Duke hasn't seen her ring while Cookie laments her hidden greatness.
Aerie decides to keep her true power hidden until she can make a grand revelation.
Cookie encourages Aerie to become the strongest while she questions the meaning of secret strength.
A sudden, booming crash startles the young girl as she wanders through the castle halls.
Castle staff and guards watch in alarm as a strange, chilling wind sweeps the courtyard. Panic erupts as screams of terror echo throughout the castle, warning everyone about approaching monsters. A massive, sharp-legged insect monster descends upon the castle walls, terrifying those on the ground. Northern knights assemble in the courtyard to face the winged creature that infiltrated the castle grounds. Peering through a window, Aerie learns that a monster followed the returning knights into the castle. Aerie feels the urge to help as she worries about the knights getting hurt in battle. The head lady-in-waiting finds the young girl's concern for the castle residents to be adorable.
The black-haired Duke strides forward with a specialized sword to eliminate the monster threat personally.
With a single, swift strike, the Duke easily cleaves through the massive insect monster's body. The Duke stands firm, sword in hand, as the monster collapses into a heap behind him. A knight watches in stunned silence as the Duke makes short work of the dangerous intruder. Dark, swirling energy dissipates from the fallen monster as its physical form begins to crumble away. An urgent report warns the Duke that his dark energy is flaring up after the exertion.
Tendrils of black shadows swirl around the Duke as he remains still, hiding his physical strain.
The knights celebrate the Duke's power, confident that no monster can survive his immediate presence. Aerie watches with admiration, noting that everyone in the castle relies on the Duke's incredible strength. Looking at the Duke's back, the girl suspects that there is more than people can see.
Aerie senses the Duke's hidden suffering, worrying that the man is actually in immense pain.
Back in her room, the girl lies on her large bed, unable to stop her thoughts. The ornate castle interior remains quiet as a blue-tinted light filters through the grand windows. Aerie recalls the Duke's strained expression during her test, convinced her intuition about him is correct. Memories of the Duke walking away after the fight reinforce the girl's fear for his health. A celestial pattern divider frames the girl's persistent worry that the Duke is unwell or injured. Sitting up abruptly, Aerie wonders if she should go check on the Duke in his quarters. Lord Raspin informs the girl that the Duke is currently resting and should not be disturbed. The advisor stands tall, emphasizing the importance of the Duke's solitude during his recovery period. Aerie freezes in place, her large purple eyes reflecting her disappointment and ongoing concern for Declan. Aerie decides to stay away to avoid being a nuisance during the Duke's much-needed rest. The girl resolves to wait until the next day to thank the Duke for her gifts. Several days pass in a blur as Aerie unsuccessfully tries to find the Duke in the castle. Distressed and unable to focus, Aerie panics because the Duke hasn't appeared for several days. Lost in her thoughts, Aerie accidentally finds herself standing right in front of the Duke's door. A cryptic sign hanging on the Duke's door clearly indicates that children are not allowed inside. Despite being told to keep her distance, Aerie is too overwhelmed by worry to leave. The girl feels a strong need to thank the Duke personally for the many gifts received.
The head lady in waiting catches Aerie and asks if she is trying to visit the Duke. Aerie peeks through a small crack in the door, trying to get a glimpse of Declan.
The lady in waiting offers to help Aerie peek inside if she wears her protective suit briefly.
Aerie spots the Duke lying on a sofa and wonders if he is merely deep in sleep.
Reminding herself of the warnings, the girl keeps a cautious distance from the resting Anne. Curiosity and concern get the better of her as she slowly creeps closer to the sofa.
Peering over the side of the furniture, Aerie finally gets a close look at the Duke.
Seeing the Duke sleeping peacefully, the girl feels relieved that he doesn't seem to be hurting. Aerie observes that the sleeping Duke is frowning, sensing his hidden inner distress. The young girl wonders if the resting man is currently trapped in a sad dream. A silent prayer fills the air, wishing for the Duke to find peace from nightmares. Aerie reaches out a tiny finger to touch the sleeping man's dark, messy hair. Horror strikes Aerie as she realizes she touched the Duke without gaining proper permission first. The girl falls backward as a sudden, intense shockwave of dark energy repels her touch. Cookie the gingerbread man cries out in alarm, fearing for Aerie's safety after the contact. A notification suggests that Aerie accidentally attempted to purify the man's dark energy without realizing. A close-up emphasizes the moment Aerie's small hand makes contact with the Duke's head. Narration explains that a failed purification has forced the two into a shared nightmare world.
Aerie stands in a desolate wasteland, realizing she has been pulled into the Duke's dream.
Spotting a figure in the distance, Aerie recognizes the Duke standing among several armored knights. A knight warns the Duke that people will condemn him if he leaves his wife's body on the battlefield, asking if he will truly follow Lady Olivia's final, painful wish. Clenching his armored fist, the Duke grimly confirms that he is only doing what Olivia wanted. Narrative text reveals that Olivia, a great knight, requested her tainted body remain on the plains. The Duke notes that while others might resent him, no one hates him more than himself. In the dream, the Duke vows to protect their children even at the cost of his life, while dark shadows pool beneath the young girl's feet. Trapped in the sludge, Aerie panics as she becomes unable to move, while Cookie warns her that the nightmare's evil energy will soon swallow her whole. Cookie reassures Aerie, claiming to be the strongest summoned beast in the world. Cookie prepares to use his power while a voice suggests returning to the room as the Duke's nightmare silhouette fades into the distance. Declan wakes up on the sofa with a start, looking disoriented after the shared dream. Aerie stares at the Duke with wide eyes, questioning if the entire experience was just a dream.
The Duke moves with incredible speed, standing up instantly as he realizes the girl is there.
Declan questions why Aerie is in his room and warns her to stay away for safety. Aerie proudly points out her puff suit, claiming it makes her safe from his dark energy. Declan remains unconvinced, pointing out that an outfit doesn't automatically make the young girl invincible. The Duke asks why she snuck into his room, leaving the embarrassed girl struggling for words. Wiping sweat from his face, Declan dismisses his visible strain and tells her not to worry.
A close-up on Aerie's purple eyes reveals a newfound sense of serious purpose and determination.
Aerie reflects on her belief that the Duke is the world's protector who must be saved. The little girl clenches her hand, realizing she has only focused on the world's survival until now. Narrative text describes the Grand Duke as a man who carries the world's heavy burdens alone. Declan looks down at the girl with a neutral, calm expression, while she stares back intently. Aerie declares her resolution, making up her mind about her role in the Duke's life. Placing a hand on her chest, the girl prepares to make a grand, dramatic announcement. Aerie vows to grow up incredibly fast, aiming to reach her full potential without further delay. Declan admits he doesn't understand her determination, but notes that even beginners must master their powers. A rare, gentle smile appears on the Duke's face as he encourages Aerie to do her best. At the Melissa March estate, a resident is surprised to receive an unexpected letter from the north. The letter contains cute handwriting where Aerie informs her grandmother she will stay 2 more months.
The lavender-haired woman is frozen in shock as she processes the news of the extended stay.
Grandma cries out for her precious baby, terrified by the news, while her companion asks what happened. In Grandma's imagination, a tiny, crying Aerie is surrounded by monsters in a dark, scary forest. The ladies express their disappointment at Aerie's absence, having planned to feed her plenty of food.
Grandma regrets sending her baby to the dangerous north, lamenting that her heart softened in the past.
A brown-haired woman notes the cute handwriting but points out Aerie's immune status in the report. Slamming her teacup, Grandma argues that immunity doesn't change the fact that the land is dangerous. The staff encourages patience while noting that the end of the letter contains one more detail. The letter mentions that Aerie will be assigned a teacher to help her learn purification magic. The women continue their tea party, discussing the implications of Aerie's new life and upcoming training.
The green-haired lady-in-waiting expresses her concern because she finds mages to be eccentric and stubborn.
A maid and butler stand in the grand hallway, looking surprised by a sudden arrival. A mage steps onto the tiled floor, his arrival marked by the mention of Herose. The 3-star purification mage Herose, an elderly man with long white hair, announces the importance of the day. Herose stands before a group of 2-star purifiers, instructing them to introduce their specialties once Ari arrives. Martin, a 2-star purifier with purple hair and tired eyes, wonders why he was brought there. A mage dismisses another's theory as dusty, arguing that the young lady would never enjoy it. Herose reassures Martin that his specialty and basic principles remains crucial for the foundation stage of training. The group of mages stands together, appearing confused as a knocking sound echoes through the room. One of the mages notes that the sound resembles a bird pecking from somewhere nearby. Another mage rejects the idea, arguing that a bird would not be knocking on the door. A small foot kicks the door open, signaling the entrance of a typical northern child. 2 mages watch as the door opens, noting that no local child is usually this polite. Irie performs a respectful bow, bending forward until the crown of her head is visible. A tray with a pitcher and glasses is brought in to refresh the waiting mages. Herose thanks Irie for the refreshments while she expresses her eagerness to learn from the teachers. Herose holds a scroll, informing Irie that they need to check something for her first class. The elderly mage asks Irie to select the one lesson among 5 that interests her most. A list presents 5 subjects, including practical rituals, monster detection training, and Martin's meditation fundamentals. 2 mages enthusiastically pitch their practical purification and ritual classes to the young girl. A mage promises Ari that choosing their class will allow her to observe monsters.
Ari stares at the list with serious determination, prompted by a voice to make her choice.
Martin looks on from a distance, resolved to step back as he usually does during selections. Martin reflects on how students typically prefer flashy practice courses over the basic fundamentals he teaches.
The purple-haired mage believes Irie would never choose a subject as basic as his purification meditation.
Irie surprises the room by declaring her desire to learn purification meditation with teacher Martin.
Martin stares in disbelief, shocked that the young girl actually chose his specific course.
Herose commends the choice, explaining that purification meditation will help her draw in surrounding dark energy.
Ari stands proudly with her scroll, looking satisfied with her decision to start with the basics. An illustration depicts the foundation of purification arts as a figure meditates in a blue aura. Martin remembers how people mock basic meditation, calling it creepy or for dummies. Flashbacks show how others quickly became bored with meditation and walked away from Martin's teachings.
Narrative text explains that the art of purification meditation was consistently ignored and dismissed by others.
Herose leads the other mages away so that Ari can finally begin her first lesson. Martin instructs Ari to sit and close her eyes to become aware of the dark energy. The teacher explains that while difficult at first, focusing will cause the dark energy to gather. Martin predicts that Ari will soon grow tired of the stationary task and quit. The mage expects his student to start whining within 30 seconds as she sits in meditation. Ari remains perfectly still and focused as a soft glow begins to surround her tiny form. Martin's expression shifts to one of absolute shock as he witnesses the girl's immediate success.
A sudden pulse of energy vibrates through the room as the meditation takes hold.
Ari maintains her focus, proving the mage's low expectations of a child's patience to be wrong. Text highlights the girl as Irie Ortezo, a child with a surprisingly disciplined spirit. Martin is stunned to see that the young girl is actually meditating properly and working hard. The teacher initially thought she had fallen asleep sitting up due to her intense, motionless focus. Martin observes in awe as the dark energy slowly begins to gather and swirl around Ari. The purple-haired man stands speechless, unable to process the incredible display of talent before him. Martin admits to himself that he never expected a child to take purification meditation this seriously. Ari reflects privately on the fact that it has been quite some time since she meditated. The girl finds the process familiar, comparing it to the character classes from her taekwondo training. Irie recalls her taekwondo days, where meditation was a foundational part of her training. Ari meditates on her rug, finding it difficult to deliberately pull in the dark energy. Determined to succeed, the young girl resolves to focus more intensely on gathering the energy. The dark energy gathers around Irie before being stored as concentrated purification power. Irie opens her eyes and cheerfully announces that the room is now completely clean. Ari excitedly tells Martin she is finished while the stunned teacher stares at her in shock.
Narrative text explains that the dark energy gathered around Ari before suddenly vanishing into thin air.
Martin wonders if she lost control and scattered the energy, or if she actually purified it. Bouncing on her feet, the polite young girl timidly calls out to her speechless teacher.
Irie looks up with wide, sparkling eyes as she waits for her teacher's final assessment.
Martin is flabbergasted, realizing the girl achieved a perfect score of 100 on her attempt. Eri bows deeply while thanking her teacher, further impressing him with her respectful, disciplined nature.
Martin cautions himself not to get too excited, expecting the child to eventually lose interest.
Eri enthusiastically promises to continue practicing her meditation very hard until their next scheduled meeting. The scene shifts to the exterior of the northern castle as a brand new day begins. A stack of formal letters arrives at the estate, clearly marked as mail from the south.
Declan sits at his grand desk, carefully reviewing the various letters sent to the Northern Territory.
A letter reveals that the Marchioness will allow Eri to stay in the north for now. The Marchioness warns that any harm coming to Eri would be considered an act of war. The letter concludes with the Marquiness announcing her plans to personally travel to the north soon.
Grandma remembers her vow to raise Eri away from any speck of filthy dark energy.
Declan notes that the Marchioness's fierce and overprotective personality has not changed at all. With the South informed, the Duke decides that another important matter must now be sorted. Declan and his aide discuss how bizarre it is that the girl suddenly turned out immune. The Duke suspects that the results of her tests 5 years ago might have been tampered.
Declan decides that they must reinvestigate what happened in the past to uncover the truth.
The Duke orders his aide to watch Eri and request an ancient stone from the palace. The purple-haired aide asks if the Duke has heard the news regarding Eri's class performance. The assistant reports that Eri's performance in her purification classes has been absolutely remarkable. The aide explains that the teacher was so moved he gave her a perfect score. A celebratory graphic shows a happy Eri next to a perfect score of 100%. Narrative text explains that the atmosphere in the castle has shifted since the lessons began. The maid and butler joyfully congratulate Eri on placing first in her purification class. Eri modestly points out that she is the only student, making her first place by default. Two red-haired maids present Eri with a pitcher of green juice as a congratulatory gift. Eri sips her juice, worrying that maintaining her secret strength persona is becoming quite tricky. Declan sits at a massive dinner table, no longer choosing to dine in total solitude. Eri wears a fancy blue dress, looking every bit the noble daughter of the estate. A system notification reveals Eri is close to reaching 2-star status as a Tree of Light. Eri and Cookie investigate a book together, with the girl finding something surprising inside. Cookie the gingerbread man stands proudly as he helps his mistress with her research. Eri flips through a booklet titled Weekly Magic Tower News to stay informed on recent events. The cover of the booklet promises to reveal the many mysteries of the Magic Tower. While looking for Martin's article, Eri discovers a troubling report regarding the Magic Tower's news. Eri learns that the Tower mages are bringing monster half-bloods into the facility. Cookie explains that the monster half-bloods are being used to assist with various tower experiments. The tower officially claims these tests are simple, humane exercises, but Eri remains skeptical.
Eri questions the ethics of the Magic Tower's treatment of these monster half-blood slaves.
History reveals that monster half-bloods were born between monsters and humans and subjected to abuse.
Narrative text explains how these half-bloods were cruelly experimented on, leading them to hate humans. A tower burns as text notes a tragic incident marked the North's downfall.
Eri reflects on the horrific experiments that once took place within the tower.
Looking at a heavy chain, Eri remembers reading about these dark events before. A young boy with blue hair coughs blood into his trembling, bruised hand.
Eri fears that similar horrors might still be occurring somewhere within the tower. The blue-haired boy sits chained on a cold floor, his body covered in wounds.
Recruitment notices for staff roles appear alongside a list of supporters for the series. The Northern Magic Tower stands tall and imposing against a cold, wintry sky. The purple-haired teacher, Martin, closes his eyes and enters a state of deep concentration. A mage watches Martin, questioning why anyone would be so addicted to basic meditation. One mage asks Martin for practical lessons, while another dismisses the value of basics.
Martin tells the mages they are jealous of his position as Eris' teacher.
The mages mockingly suggest that Lady Eri will eventually lose interest in such dull classes. Martin grinds his teeth, visibly stung by the suggestion that Eri might leave his tutelage. Another mage interrupts Martin's internal crisis to announce that he has a surprise visitor. Lady Eri stands in the doorway, offering a bright and polite greeting to her teacher. Martin asks Eri what brings her to the tower since today is not a lesson day. A decorative panel signals a transition to events that took place a little bit earlier. A sudden, loud exclamation of shock rings out over the pages of an ornate book. The gingerbread Cookie is outraged to learn about the tower's experiments on monster half-bloods. Cookie expresses his fear of the mages, while Eri notes the experiment's darkened victims' hearts. Eri turns toward her companion, beginning to address the Cookie with a serious tone. The young girl sits in her room, contemplating the dark history she has just discovered.
A teddy bear lies near embroidery materials amidst a background of soft floral patterns. A red and black striped ribbon sits prepared for a purpose yet to be revealed. Eri wonders how she and Cookie will manage to sneak inside the heavily guarded tower. Pointing at a map of the estate, Eri reveals that she has a secret plan.
Back in the present, Eri explains she came to ask questions about purification meditation. Irie stands amidst a flurry of cute teddy bear icons, acting with exaggerated, charming innocence. The mages wonder if they are dreaming while Eri asks about reviewing the trivial meditation. Eri apologizes for the interruption and asks if the busy teacher can spare some time. Martin and his colleagues stand completely frozen, overwhelmed by the young girl's unexpected dedication. Overcome with emotion and pride, Martin clutches his face as tears well in his eyes. Martin enthusiastically agrees to teach her anything, while Irie promises to show off her meditation. A montage shows Martin and Eri sitting together during a focused and successful meditation session. The teacher and students sit peacefully on the floor following their intense magical training.
Eri looks up at her teacher, preparing to ask him a very important follow-up question. Eri asks to look around the tower, and Martin happily grants her full permission. Martin warns her to stay away from the underground laboratories, sparking Eris' immediate curiosity.
Martin explains the underground is a restricted, chaotic maze with nothing worth seeing for outsiders.
Eris' eyes widen in shock as she realizes she has found the location she sought. Eri and Cookie realize the book was right about victims being locked up underground.
Martin looks confused as the young girl suddenly stops and addresses him with renewed intensity.
Eri declares with starry eyes that true meditation must be practiced in the harshest environments. Irie requests to meditate in the underground labs, leaving Martin absolutely flabbergasted by her boldness.
The young lady looks up with sparkling eyes, insisting that they descend into the basement.
Martin feels a deep sense of inadequacy as he watches his young student's incredible drive.
The purple-haired man cries out in shame, feeling he has much to learn from Eri. Martin reflects that his years of lonely study were meant for this moment with Eri. Fired up with passion, Martin vows to personally secure her permission to enter the underground. A door swings open as a voice calls out for a moment's patience. Eri determines that since monster half-bloods fear adults, she must take the lead.
Basking in a floral glow, Irie resolutely vows to save the suffering children herself. The scene shifts to the dark, foreboding depths beneath the magic tower's stone walls.
A mage enters a cold room, summoning the frightened monster half-bloods from their despair.
With cruel smiles, the mages command the captive children to leave their cramped cell.
The children suffer through painful injections, crying out in frustration against their harsh treatment.
Bruises mar the small arm of a child as a callous hand grips them. The group of captives stands in miserable silence, lamenting their never-ending nightmare of abuse. 7-year-old Karhan stares blankly, wondering if they will ever escape this underground hell.
Narrative text reveals the children have endured months of captivity within the tower's depths. Flashbacks show the orphanage head selling the children off once their monster heritage surfaced. The children were paraded through illegal exhibition cages before arriving at their current prison.
Karhan remembers hoping for better treatment when they were first brought to the tower.
The mages justify their cruelty by claiming that monster half-bloods are not truly human. Observing the dark energy within the children, the mages casually suggest beginning new experiments. The mages dismiss concerns about discovery, confident that no one cares about the underground. Once experiments began, the children started dying, viewed as mere specimens by their captors.
A child lies still on the cold floor, another victim of the mages' greed.
The mages poured their collective hatred for monsters onto the children, leaving them hopeless.
Karhan gasps in agony, clutching his stomach as a wave of intense pain strikes.
The children collapse as Karhan realizes they are suffering side effects from the mage's drugs.
Karhan despairs at the endless pain, realizing it will persist as long as they live.
A close-up reveals Karhan's wide, tearful eye as he struggles to maintain his consciousness.
Staring at the heavy laboratory doors, Karhan clings to a desperate desire to survive.
A title card signals the transition back to the main story's current timeline. Martin introduces a wide-eyed Eri to the mage's chaotic and crowded underground laboratory. Overworked mages spiral into madness, screaming about their endless research and lack of sleep. Martin notes that one mage has been awake for over 400 hours straight. In a corner, eccentric mages cackle while mixing strange, bubbling potions in a large cauldron. Eri notes that Martin's help allowed them to reach the tower's restricted basement levels. Martin and Eri stand before a massive door surrounded by towering stacks of research papers.
Looking at the scattered documents, Martin wonders how they will locate the children buried here.
Martin apologizes for the mess, explaining that research has driven his fellow mages mad. Eri recalls the maid's warnings that tower mages are considered unusual and complete oddballs. Eri points toward the ceiling, noticing something strange drifting through the air of the lab. The young girl asks Martin to explain the thick mist she sees filling the room. Two mages exert themselves nearby, their silhouettes barely visible through the heavy, humid air. Martin casually explains the mist is actually the collective sweat steam of the unwashed mages. Horrified by the lack of hygiene, Eri yells at the filthy mages to bathe. Cookie faints from the stench, leaving Irie to bravely face the messy laboratory alone. The room is filled with mountains of books and loose papers strewn across the floor. A speech bubble explains that the laboratory has been cleaned specifically for Irie's arrival. Eri stares at the clutter, questioning if this truly represents a tidier version of reality. Martin mentions that while meditation is usually impossible here, they will attempt it today. Martin leads the way cheerfully as Irie feels a heavy, oppressive energy weighing on her. Eri resolves to endure the suffocating atmosphere to find and rescue the suffering children quickly. Eri questions Martin about the reports of experiment helpers she read about in the news. Martin confirms that various helpers and monster half-bloods are kept in the basement's secret areas. The teacher explains that the entrance to those areas is currently buried under piles of junk. Martin explains how the magically shifting layout makes it difficult to find specific rooms. Eri yells in shock after learning that the mages completely ignore each other's work. Tired mages tell Eri to move while she compares their haggard appearance to zombies. Eri wonders what to do as the mages continue to ignore her and their surroundings. Eri views the mages collapsed on the ground, completely burned out from their magical research. Eri realizes the exhausted mages are in no condition to listen to any of her requests. The basement is filled with trash and curses against the Tower Master written on the walls. Martin invites Irie to meditate on the floor despite the broken glass and surrounding mess. Irie determines that the environment is too filthy for meditation and resolves to take action. Eri knocks on the administrator's door, ready to voice her concerns about the basement state. Eri bursts into the office, loudly calling for the Tower Master to hear her urgent request. Holding cleaning supplies, Irie bravely asks for permission to clean the entire tower basement herself. Administrator Check is shocked to see Lady Irie standing in his office with cleaning tools. Check notes the Tower Master's absence and asks what brings the young lady to see him. Irie's eyes burn with a fierce, determined fire as she prepares to argue for the changes. Eri passionately argues that cleaning and proper hygiene are absolutely necessary for conducting effective research. Finding her adorable, Check decides to grant her request to keep her family's favor. A decorative frame announces that the tower adopted 5 rules for proper living the next day. Eri's rules mandate cleaning, washing, proper floor etiquette, morning exercise, and medical treatment when ill. Mages gather around the posted rules, questioning if the demands for exercise are a joke. Martin warns the mages that their research funds will be cut if they refuse to comply. Martin smugly assumes Eri created the rules just to ensure a quiet place for her meditation. Martin orders the grumbling mages to begin their exercise routine as part of the new regulations. Narrative text explains that Irie's tower rehabilitation project began to pick up speed very quickly. Eri cheerfully announces that today everyone will work together to clean the tower's messy basement. Some mages complain that they are far too busy with their research to participate in cleaning. Narrative text explains that some mages grumbled and complained at the start of the project. New ventilation windows are installed, bringing fresh air and light into the dark magic tower. A mage notes that it is much easier to breathe with the new supplies and towels. A mage realizes that the organized workspace makes finding research materials a much easier task. Mages performing stair workouts feel their bodies becoming much lighter and more energetic than before. 1 week later, the tower stands tall under a cloudy sky as the transformation continues. Mages admit that the new lifestyle isn't bad, and their morning dizziness has finally stopped. Eri uses a feather duster as the narrative explains how the tower is slowly being transformed. Eri smiles contentedly while she works to improve the environment of the magic tower's interior. Narrative text explains that the transformation surpassed what Irie had originally expected to happen. Cookie the gingerbread man sighs in relief, finally able to breathe in the purified air. Irie announces they are almost finished cleaning, while Cookie notes the impressive results of her work. A group of mages approaches Eri, calling out to her with slightly hesitant expressions. The mages stand before the young girl with awkward faces, clearly wanting to say something important. Irie looks up in surprise as the mages express their desire to thank her personally. The mages admit their initial skepticism, but confess that their research results have actually improved. A mage explains that the lack of rotten smells has allowed them to concentrate much better. Eri beams with delight as she hears the mages credit her for their improved research focus. The system notices the mage's gratitude and decides to consume the delicious dark energy released. The ring of purification spins rapidly, absorbing massive amounts of dark energy from the mage's hearts.
Eri walks through the hallway and stops as she hears an unusual noise coming from nearby. A thin sliver of light shines through the crack of a set of heavy, dark doors.
Karhan looks toward the door as light and sounds from the hallway reach his room.
The blue-haired Karhan stares silently, his neck marked by a painful, dark purple bruise.
Recruitment for translators and editors is announced alongside promotional text for various comic series. Narrative text explains that a red door hides a secret in the tower's basement. Mages regularly enter the room to subject the monster half-bloods to cruel medical experiments.
The children endure a miserable cycle of being trapped and abused behind locked doors. Narrative text notes that the atmosphere within the tower has recently begun to shift.
Karhan listens as mages outside his cell shout commands about cleaning and sorting trash.
Two mages discuss the tower's restlessness, attributing it to the young lady's frequent visits.
Narrative text suggests that the research staff should pause their experiments for several days. The mages decide to hide their dirty activities from important visitors to avoid discovery.
A dark-haired girl in the cell asks if the others can hear a child's voice. Mages boast about their hard work to Eri while pointing out the freshly cleaned areas. The captives lament their unfair fate, feeling they are destined to rot in the basement.
Karhan is drawn to a pure, bright voice outside his door that lacks any despair. Clutching his bruised neck, Karhan wonders why he feels so strange hearing the girl's voice.
An image of a bright, smiling girl surrounded by flowers appears in the boy's mind.
Karhan experiences a sudden surge of relief, noting that the pain in his chest has lessened. Sitting alone in the dark, the blue-haired boy realizes his physical suffering is fading away. Eri stops in her tracks, sensing something important as she looks around the basement. The young girl stares at the massive red doors, questioning what lies hidden behind them. Martin remarks on the clean workspace while a curious Irie remains focused on the door. Eri asks Martin about the room, claiming she heard someone groaning in pain from inside. A wave of dread washes over Eri as she experiences an ominous bad feeling. Eri approaches the door with determination, ready to discover the source of the suffering. The young girl firmly orders Teacher Martin to open the locked door for her immediately. The children inside the cell huddle together as they hear someone approaching their prison.
Karhan looks up toward the light as the heavy laboratory doors finally begin to open.
Eri peeks into the dark, cold room and softly asks if anyone is inside. The door opens fully to reveal a bruised, shackled boy sitting on the stone floor.
Eri is struck by the sight of the boy's injuries and his vacant, tired expression.
Irie recognizes the boy as Karhan, a future revolutionary she remembers from the novel's plot.
Eri confirms she has finally located the room where the monster half-bloods are kept. Karhan shields his eyes, overwhelmed by the intense brightness coming from the laboratory hallway. The boy sits motionless in the light, his body marked by signs of severe mistreatment. Karhan realizes that the girl standing before him is the owner of the voice he heard. Karhan recognizes her importance, but wonders why someone like her would enter such a place. Eri is horrified as she notices the countless scars and rough skin covering the boy's body. Eri empathizes with Karhan's suffering, understanding why he would eventually want to seek revenge. The young girl reaches out gently to touch the hand of the wounded captive boy. Irie looks Karhan in the eye and asks if he wants to leave with her. Karhan hesitates to accept her help, worrying that his hands are too dirty to touch. Eri ignores his hesitation and pulls the startled boy into a warm, protective embrace. Holding the boy tightly, Eri resolves that she will truly save him this time around. A mage approaches the administrator's desk to deliver a report on the tower's recent changes.
Mages celebrate their newfound energy and productivity, noting that no one has fainted all week.
Administrator Check acknowledges the clean basement and admits they owe a great debt to Eri. Check and his assistant look up in shock as a loud voice interrupts their conversation. Eri bursts into the office with the rescued children, announcing she has something to say. Check initially dismisses the children as experimental subjects before realizing their true, pitiful condition. The administrator is visibly shaken, questioning why the children are in such a battered state. Irie yells at Check, passionately declaring that these children were being abused in the basement. Administrator Check expresses deep confusion, claiming he personally reviews every report, while Irie stands firm. Visual evidence of the hidden laboratory reveals discarded medical supplies used for cruel, inhumane experiments. Irie accuses a mage of being a liar, while Check reels from the shocking truth. The guilty mages fall to their knees in shock as their secret laboratory is finally exposed. A voice demands answers from a mage named Molden regarding his role in the illegal experiments. Check furiously confronts Molden for lying about exercise tests and performing brutal human experimentation instead. Other mages in the hallway whisper in confusion, wondering about the source of the loud shouting. Molden frantically claims he is innocent and merely used the captive children for minor research purposes. A mage presents a stack of incriminating papers to Check, who gasps at the hidden evidence. Eri and a companion reveal that the papers found in the lab prove reports were falsified. Check trembles with rage while holding the falsified reports as Molden begs for a misunderstanding. Check orders the mages to be shackled immediately for abusing their freedom and mistreating the children. Heavy metal shackles are snapped shut around the wrists of a disgraced and defeated magic researcher. Eri cheers for justice as the bad people are led away, demanding an eye for an eye. Narrative text explains that the guilty mages will be exiled to a northern prison for researchers. A system notification promises the mages will be severely punished once the Grand Duke hears everything.
The rescued children look up with tentative relief as their period of torture finally comes to an end.
A bruised boy watches silently as the narrative declares that the mage's cruel reign is over. Surrounded by a floral aura, Irie smiles brightly, satisfied that the rescue mission was a success. A celebratory notification announces that all the monster half-blood children have been rescued safe and sound. Eri beams with pure joy, content that she was able to change the children's miserable fate. Chuck sincerely apologizes to Karin, taking full responsibility for failing to notice the basement's hidden horrors. The administrator bows his head, asking the young boy if he can ever find forgiveness. Karin stares vacantly, explaining he has no strength to feel anger and only fears the future. Eri asks if the children will be set free while Check stands solemnly by the boy. Irie makes a bold request, asking Check if she can take all the children with her. Check is visibly taken aback by Eri's sudden desire to take custody of the monster half-bloods. Eri excitedly lists her massive savings and promises to get the Duke's permission for their care. Discarded shackles lie on the floor as the narrative suggests letting the children decide their own path. The children are stunned and relieved as Eri declares they are finally free from their slavery. Eri reaches out to the confused children, inviting them to start a new life with her. The children look at each other in disbelief, wondering why a human would offer them kindness. Text bubbles outline Eri's plans to bring them to Ortezo Castle and teach them martial arts. Eri smiles radiantly, envisioning a future where the children are happy and well protected under her care. A decorative pink frame marks a transition in the story as the setting begins to shift. Eri strikes a triumphant pose in front of a map, announcing that the mission is officially complete. The 5 children are introduced as Dinan, Belze, Lyrid, Sarl, and the future revolutionary leader Karhen. Eri reflects on the children's names, realizing they are all legendary figures from the original novel. An image of a blue book titled The Monster Family of the Northern Snowfields appears. Chibi Eri thinks deeply, likely recalling the tragic backstories of her new companions from her memories. Dark silhouettes suggest the immense power the children are destined to awaken in the near future. Legendary weapons glow with magical energy as the narrative mentions the children's future as powerful warriors. Eri looks at her mission report, amazed that she has accidentally befriended such incredible historical figures. Eri walks through the Grand Castle, resolving to stay by the children's side to prevent their revenge. Entering the grand hallway, Eri gasps at the massive size and beauty of the castle's interior. The children are completely overwhelmed by the high ceilings and expensive decor of their new home. Irie enthusiastically announces that she will give everyone a full tour of their new living quarters. Eri shows the stunned children their individual rooms, which are filled with light and luxury. Presenting a massive marble tub, Irie tells the children they can finally get clean and fluffy. Irie joyfully holds up a toothbrush and paste, eager to begin the children's rehabilitation and hygiene. Karin thanks the young lady but politely insists that he is capable of washing himself without assistance. Eri softly calls Karin's name as she watches him turn away to head toward the bath. The other children marvel at their new room, while one asks Irie if something is wrong. Irie reflects on Karin's behavior, noting that he has avoided eye contact since their very first meeting. A shimmering light dances across the luxurious room as the children begin their new, comfortable lives. Karin thinks to himself that the current situation feels incredibly strange and unlike anything he expected. A lavishly decorated bedroom with plush toys and soft bedding stands ready for the children's comfort. Karhan reprimands himself, feeling that a supposed monster like him does not deserve such beautiful surroundings. Karhan recalls how they let their guard down at the tower before the cruel experiments began. Karin's vacant eyes reflect his inner struggle to accept the kindness and luxury of his surroundings. Eri sits with the boy, offering a quiet presence to help him through his mental distress. A hand rests gently on the soft, intricately patterned carpet as the boy contemplates his situation. Karin sits alone on the floor, still feeling the weight of his past despite the comfort. Karin thinks about having a debt to repay before he eventually faces his own inevitable death. A messenger informs the Duke that the shield spells are now fully installed around the castle. The Duke asks if the report is finished, while the mages claim there is more news. The mages excitedly present a new document to their superiors, acting far more cheerful than usual. The Duke and his aide are unsettled by the mages' sudden change from zombies to enthusiasts.
The Duke observes that the research funding report from the Magic Tower has finally arrived today.
He initially dismisses the paperwork as standard logs that likely contain no significant or surprising information.
The Grand Duke stops abruptly as a surprising piece of information in the report catches him.
A formal report explains that Lady Aerie solved every single problem currently facing the Magic Tower.
The Duke looks confused and asks about the strange praise scroll he just found in reports.
Aerie happily greets her father, telling him that she has been eagerly waiting for his return. The Duke asks if there was trouble at the tower while Aerie runs toward the couch. Aerie proudly claims that she took care of everything that happened during her visit to the tower. The Duke realizes his daughter was treated like a hero while he was away hunting monsters. The Duke scolds her for being in danger, but Aerie explains there was no other choice.
He decides she must be lectured and forbids her from acting alone without telling anyone first.
The Duke threatens to make her eat broccoli and yucky vegetables if she goes off alone. Aerie is horrified by the threat of broccoli, reacting with a shocked and dramatic facial expression.
Aerie remembers her grandmother's delicious blanched broccoli and completely ignores her father's attempt at a punishment.
The Duke realizes his scolding has failed because Aerie actually enjoys the food he intended as punishment.
Aerie sits on the couch, her attention suddenly snapping back to the important matter at hand. Aerie insists the children did nothing wrong and shouldn't be scolded, and the Duke calmly agrees.
Aerie vows to personally remove any dark energy so the children can live a peaceful life.
Aerie's face lights up with a determined smile as she envisions a better life for everyone.
The Duke smiles gently, noting that Aerie's words and spirit perfectly mirror those of his mother.
The young girl clenches her fists, resolved to take full responsibility for her new companion's safety.
Narrative text highlights that reforming people's magical understanding single-handedly is an incredible and rare feat.
A gloved hand rests on a dark-clad knee during a moment of heavy and thoughtful silence. Father and daughter share a quiet moment of understanding before the scene shifts to later days. A tea set and tiered tray of sweets are prepared in a grand room overlooking the garden. The Grand Duke addresses Karhen, acknowledging him as the monster half-blood child his daughter brought home. Karhen finds the Duke's presence as overwhelming and intimidating as all the rumors had suggested previously.
Shadows loom as Karhen fearfully wonders if his period of torture and torment is finally starting.
Narrative text explains that several days have passed since Karhen entered the Ortez Grand Ducal Castle. Karfen reflects on his time at the castle, noting with surprise that no one has hit him. Karhen's wide-eyed expression reveals his growing fear as he faces the powerful Grand Duke Ortez directly.
Karhen's dread peaks as the Duke mentions his monster half-blood status, fearing the start of torment.
The Duke confirms he senses no trace of dark energy within the young boy. He observes that the idea of monster half-bloods being inherently evil is purely prejudice. Karhen looks down, appearing more like a noble son than a dangerous monster hybrid. Narrative text explains that the Duke has already heard the full story from Aerie. The Duke agrees to respect his daughter's wishes regarding the children's living arrangements. He tells Karhen to put aside his fears and try to befriend his daughter. Karhen is shocked when the Duke tells him to simply become friends with Aerie. The boy stares in disbelief as he processes the Duke's request for genuine friendship. Karhen incorrectly assumes he is meant to be a slave who takes physical beatings. The Duke is stunned that a child speaks with such a cynical and mature tone. He clarifies that since Karhen is not dangerous, he should live as a friend.
Karhen is stunned to learn he will not be beaten or forced into slavery.
The young boy stares in silence, struggling to accept the Duke's surprising kindness. While sitting at a grand dinner table, Karhen wonders what his new purpose is. The group of children gathers for a massive and luxurious meal in a grand room. Din and Belze joyfully hold their food, eager to eat after years of neglect. Aerie reminds her friends to remove the fish bones so they don't get hurt.
Lyrid boastfully claims she can easily pull the bones out using her bare hands. Ivory activates grandma mode, insisting the children use forks and spoons to stay clean.
Sorrel and Din look at their cutlery with confusion, unsure of how to use them. A close-up shows hands gracefully deboning a fish using the proper silver knife and fork. Aerie praises Karhen for his natural grace and encourages him to keep practicing his manners. Ivory recalls her grandmother's advice about healthy children and hopes her friends gain weight. The other children eat messily and chaotic while Karhen remains composed at the table. Aerie's attempt at praise is interrupted by a loud burp from the happy-eating children. The children exclaim that the castle's high-quality food is far better than former garbage. Belze and Lyrid continue eating with their hands, questioning the necessity of silver forks. One of the boys falls asleep face first in his plate after eating a skelf.
Irie watches the messy, chaotic scene with a sweat drop, realizing her work is just beginning. Irie reminds them to eat slowly and sleep in proper beds instead of the table.
She realizes the children don't know manners because no one ever bothered to teach them.
Irie reflects on her grandmother's teaching that proper manners are essential for healthy growth. A warm memory shows a kind grandmother figure affectionately patting a young Irie's head. Kara notices Irie's troubled expression and worries that their behavior is stressing her up. The boy considers taking charge of the group but fears appearing too desperate for approval.
A thought bubble expresses the blue-haired boy's inner conflict regarding how to help Irie.
Irie and Karin share a quiet moment of frustration over the children's lack of etiquette. Irie's eyes suddenly sparkle with a sharp spark of inspiration as a plan takes shape. Irie laughs mischievously as she announces she has a great idea for the group's future.
Belze and Din look curious as Irie prepares to take them to a new location. A map highlights the location of the prestigious academy within the Ortez Grand Duchy.
The grand exterior of the Ortez Castle Academy stands tall against a cloudy sky.
Narrative text explains that the academy provides professional instruction in various subjects and etiquette. Standing in her father's office, Irie loudly declares her desire to attend the academy classes. The Duke looks concerned, warning his daughter that the academy is a fairly dangerous place. He explains that respect isn't guaranteed for a princess in a place ruled by strength.
A sepia-toned memory shows a boy reacting aggressively, illustrating the academy's harsh social environment.
Irie clenches her fists, resolved to straighten out any bad kids she encounters there. The Duke sighs and agrees to the plan, promising to assign protective knights to her. Irie confidently leads her new friends through the academy hallway to begin their formal education. Karin fearfully asks if the academy is a place where they receive beatings, but Irie firmly denies it.
Irie sternly reminds her companions that swearing is strictly prohibited during their time at the academy.
Irie admits she feels a bit nervous about returning to formal classes after her long period away.
Irie recalls lessons from her past life at a dojang, reflecting on the character-building value she learned there.
Irie notices a small gingerbread charm in her pocket, noting this is her first time back at school.
Irie strikes a confident, heroic pose while declaring her absolute readiness to take on any upcoming challenges. The other academy students whisper amongst themselves, assuming the new arrival must be weak and lowly ranked.
Morgan dismisses Irie's previous victory over Schultz as unimpressive, claiming she is likely nothing special or powerful. The etiquette instructor, Fiona, introduces herself and calls the classroom to order for the upcoming lesson.
Morgan arrogantly demands that the teacher cut the etiquette lesson short to prioritize swordsmanship training instead.
Instructor Fiona sighs, feeling overwhelmed by the difficult behavior and lack of respect from her young students.
Irie takes a resolute step forward, ready to make a grand entrance and formally address the class.
Irie introduces herself to the group as a 5-year-old student who has just officially enrolled.
Irie stands confidently before her peers, maintaining a cheerful demeanor despite the judgmental atmosphere of the room.
Irie announces her plan to attend classes together with the group of friends she brought with her.
The other students watch with curiosity and skepticism as Irie makes her bold and unexpected declaration. Irie licks her lips with a determined expression, signaling her readiness to handle any social conflict.
Irie vows to personally purify all the dark energy within the academy, setting a righteous goal. Irie introduces her 5 companions from the Magic Tower: Karhen, Dynan, Belze, Sarl, and her companion Lyrid.
Instructor Fiona is impressed by Irie's confidence and politely welcomes the young lady to the classroom. Morgan, the red-haired heir, angrily objects to Irie's friendship with the children he calls monster half-bloods. A student hits Belze with a book, telling the group to be reasonable about their unwelcome presence. The students loudly protest, claiming that learning alongside monster half-bloods is disgusting and dangerous for everyone. Irie shouts that their behavior is incredibly rude, standing up against the class's blatant and cruel discrimination.
Irie stands her ground defiantly, ready to protect her friends from the intense hostility of her classmates.
Irie declares that the belief that monster half-bloods spread dark energy is just a nasty, baseless prejudice. Irie reminds the class that ability matters far more than bloodline, citing the Grand Duke's own words. The classroom falls into a tense silence as Irie continues to challenge the students' narrow-minded views. Instructor Fiona looks on in shock, completely surprised by the young girl's eloquent and fierce defense.
Fiona realizes that the young lady is much sharper than expected, noting her impressive character and intellect.
Fiona claps her hands to conclude the introductions and suggests starting a quiz about proper manners.
Irie and her classmates react with sudden, intense focus as they prepare for the competitive etiquette quiz.
Irie hopes the lessons are challenging so she can maximize her learning during her time at school.
Irie looks stunned as the first quiz question is presented, revealing the bizarre nature of the academy.
The quiz asks what a student should do when an old man carrying a heavy load passes by.
One of the students immediately claims that the first option provided is the easy and correct choice. Eri is horrified when a classmate argues that the second option is actually the right answer. A girl laughs while suggesting that stealing the old man's baggage is the most logical course of action.
Belze suggests hitting the man first to see his reaction, much to Eri's absolute shock and dismay.
Belize explains his reasoning for the violent approach, suggesting it would reveal if the man is wicked.
Eri is baffled by the chaotic responses, fearing that such behavior could lead to the world's destruction.
Eri raises her hand and asks the instructor to pause the quiz for a brief moment. Morgan looks on with a smug expression as Eri interrupts the lesson to address the rowdy class.
A piece of crumpled paper is thrown across the room as the classroom remains in a state of disorder.
Lyrid protects Eri from the thrown object as Eri realizes the Academy's social environment is a disaster.
A moment of heavy silence passes as the scene shifts following the disruptive behavior of the students.
Eri sighs in frustration, realizing that no one will learn anything if the current chaos continues unchecked.
A fierce tiger aura emanates from Eri as she sternly demands to address her disruptive and rude classmates.
Morgan lazily acknowledges that he was the one who threw the paper, appearing completely unbothered.
Morgan mocks the teacher as a scarecrow and challenges Eri to face him directly instead of hiding.
Eri is in class when the red-haired boy reminds her they are currently in a lesson. Fiona asks for focus while Eri tells the class they are being difficult for the teacher.
The red-haired boy feels irritated and wonders if the young girl is intentionally ignoring his presence.
Eri correctly identifies that helping an old man with heavy baggage is the proper course of action.
Eri takes first place in the quiz while the other students and Fiona react with total disbelief.
A sign on the classroom desk announces that it is now time for a school break.
Morgan confronts the group, calling Karhen a monster while Eri and her friends defend the boy. Morgan identifies himself as the strongest student and asks why Eri ignored him during the lesson. Eri gives a bored response, acknowledging his name and asking what he actually wants from her. Morgan challenges Eri to a fight, proposing that the loser must become the winner's obedient subordinate. Morgan considers Eri easy prey and resents being looked down upon as a branch family member. A thought bubble expresses Morgan's excitement at the idea of the princess serving under his command. Narrative text details the Academy's pledge, which permits internal conflict without facing the Grand Duke's curse. Morgan boasts that the upcoming combat class is the perfect place to beat Eri without interference. Eri stares at the red-haired boy with disbelief, finding his level of shamelessness to be quite impressive. Eri recalls her past life techniques and resolves to humble the troublemaker before he causes trouble. Eri confidently accepts the duel as flowers bloom around her and the red-haired boy looks smug. A decorative circular frame contains text declaring that it is time to set the situation straight. 2 empty rectangular boxes sit against a white background with green leaves in the bottom corners. The combat instructor, a man named Garen, walks through the hallway with a very serious expression. Fiona thinks to herself that the young lady is exceptionally clever and has very polite manners. Narration suggests that while Eri knows etiquette, her soft upbringing might make combat training very difficult. Durin arrives at the training yard and is confused by the children sitting in such quiet order. Eri stands ready in her training uniform, looking focused and prepared for the upcoming combat trial. Morgan stands across from her, wearing a training uniform and maintaining a very competitive, determined look. Garen asks what is happening, and a girl tells him to be quiet for the fight. Instructor Garen looks surprised as he realizes that Morgan and Lady Ortezo are about to duel. Narrative text explains that physical fights between the children of the North are a common occurrence. Garen watches the two face off and decides he will intervene if the duel becomes dangerous. The instructor tells the 2 students to begin the duel by first offering a proper greeting. Morgan attempts to rush forward, but Eri stops him and refuses to fight without correct etiquette. Eri tells Morgan not to throw a fit and insists that he must bow to her. Eri lectures the boy on basic manners while Morgan reacts with a shocked and confused outburst. An exhausted Morgan quickly performs the required bows and greetings just to start the battle. Morgan declares the duel can begin and vows to finally put the young lady in her place. Eri lets out a loud battle cry and prepares herself for the first exchange of the duel. Morgan charges forward with speed, thinking that he should finish the entire fight as quickly as possible. Morgan attempts a low attack on Eri's legs, but she agilely maneuvers out of his sight. Morgan is stunned when Eri appears behind him, while she notes her superior mastery of basics. A close-up shows Eri's small, confident smile as she prepares to deliver her decisive counterattack. A background panel features peach-colored patterns and decorative floral elements on the top and sides. Eri strikes Morgan with a secret flying kick technique to his weak spot, making him scream. The instructor and the other students watch the sudden turn of events with expressions of shock.
Karin watches in awe as text describes Irie's move as a baffling and incomprehensible combat technique.
A blue decorative frame explains this move was something never before seen in the North. A recruitment notice for translators and editors is displayed against a background of various characters.
Text panels highlight Irie's secret technique and describe her flying kick to the boy's weak spot.
Irie executes a powerful flying kick against Morgan, who lets out a loud cry of intense pain.
The teacher and the other young students are completely stunned by Irie's sudden and effective attack.
Karin watches with sparkling eyes as the narrative notes that Irie's move was an incomprehensible maneuver. A blue frame highlights that Irie's technique is completely foreign to the northern people.
Morgan crashes onto the hard ground, groaning in visible pain from the powerful strike.
A small, panicked boy watches the scene unfold, his expression filled with total confusion.
Morgan whimpers on the dirt while Irie stands over him with a calm, triumphant presence.
Irie confidently crosses her arms, appearing serene and victorious amidst a flurry of blooming flowers.
Morgan makes a pathetic threat, claiming he will report the incident to his mother.
Irie mocks the boy's cowardice, suggesting he go ahead and be a pathetic tattletale.
The red-haired boy reacts with pure outrage, unable to believe the insult he just heard. Irie reiterates her point, declaring that complaining after losing a fair duel is shameful behavior. Irie stands tall and reminds the entire class that academy conflicts must remain within the school.
Instructor Jaren is visibly shaken, realizing that Eris' martial art style is completely unknown here.
The instructor watches Irie with newfound awe, concluding that she is a genuine master of combat.
Jaren excitedly approaches the young lady, asking if she has undergone formal martial arts training.
Irie remains humbled, though the narrative confirms she is secretly a highly skilled combat expert. The teacher laughs with joy, agreeing with Fiona's assessment and anticipating an interesting school year.
Morgan sits defeated on the ground, clutching himself and letting out a quiet groan of pain.
A gentle hand is extended toward the fallen boy, offering him assistance and a fresh start.
Morgan looks up in surprise as Irie offers her hand, showing him unexpected kindness after winning. Irie recalls her master's lessons about ending every duel with a show of mutual respect. Karin watches the two children shake hands, his heart racing with intense admiration for Irie. A decorative frame notes that two young boys found themselves completely captivated by Eris' character.
Those watching reflect on the small, unwavering smile Irie maintained throughout the entire fierce confrontation.
They recall the way her eyes sparkled with determination as she expertly wielded her wooden sword.
Karin stares at her in awe, his heart pounding as he realizes how cool she is. Karin clenches his fist tightly, inspired by Eris' strength and his own desire to improve.
He remembers his own past weaknesses and wonders if gaining strength would allow him to repay Irie. Thought bubbles reflect Karin's deep-seated ambition to become as strong and capable as Lady Irie. Karin clutches his chest as a blush creeps onto his face, overwhelmed by his newfound respect. Narrative text celebrates the clean victory Irie achieved, signifying a turning point in the class's hierarchy. Irie beams with happiness, satisfied that she has finally managed to discipline her rowdy, rude classmates. Irie happily anticipates focusing on her lessons and building stronger bonds with her group of friends. An ornate emblem declares the Academy's core philosophy: strength is the only source of absolute truth.
Narration explains that in the North, children instinctively follow and respect whoever proves to be strongest.
3 students watch Irie from the doorway, their eyes literally sparkling with heart-shaped symbols of admiration. Narration recaps how Irie defeated the former top student Morgan on her very first day. 3 girls huddled together, whispering excitedly about the incredible and powerful new student in their class. As Irie walks through the halls with her friend, rumors of her prowess spread quickly everywhere. Text reveals that Eris's influence is so strong that students have even begun imitating her manners. 2 young boys stand together and loudly greet each other with polite, formal well wishes. A student approaches Irie in the library, asking for guidance on a specific etiquette test question. Irie cheerfully explains that one should never bully cats, but instead appreciate them from a distance. A group of curious students crowds around Eris's desk, eagerly seeking her advice on various manners. One boy asks if soup should be eaten with one's hands, recalling her previous dining instructions. Irie gently corrects the boy, explaining that soup must always be consumed using the proper spoon. An older boy sighs in frustration, finding the complexity of human etiquette rules to be quite exhausting. Irie remains patient and encouraging, offering to explain the rules one by one to her struggling peers. Irie looks over the students' test papers, baffled by how quickly they forget everything she teaches them. Thought bubbles note the students' genuine interest in manners despite their significant struggles with learning them.
Eri stares into the distance, wondering if there is a deeper reason for the children's poor memories.
A flashback shows a younger Eri as text explains how dark energy specifically targets children's minds.
Irie is struck by a wave of intense shock as she observes her chaotic classmates.
The young lady closes her eyes, focusing her concentration on testing a new spiritual technique. Eri shakes her gingerbread companion, insisting that he wake up and assist her with a problem.
Cookie grumbles about wanting to nap through the noisy academy hours and asks what she wants. Eri asks the sentient cookie for advice on consuming and processing a large amount of energy.
Irie explains that the wild children make it difficult for her to focus on energy purification. Following the cookie's advice, Irie enters a deep meditation to draw in and purify dark energy. Morgan watches Eri from the shadows, his pride deeply wounded after their recent combat duel.
The red-haired boy feels a pang of jealousy as he watches others gather around Eri.
Ever since their fight, Morgan has been unable to shake a strange and unfamiliar feeling. Morgan decides to approach Irie alone, bringing a bottle of coffee as a warrior's gift. Karin suddenly appears and blocks Morgan's path, coldly telling the red-haired boy to hold it. Morgan accuses Karin of stalking Irie, noting the blue-haired boy has been watching her intently. The red-haired boy expresses his disdain for Karin's low status and weak abilities. Morgan aggressively demands that Karin move, claiming the spot next to Irie for himself. A mysterious hand reaches out toward Morgan as internal rules for protecting Eri are established. Karin exerts a strange, overwhelming power on Morgan, causing the boy to question his body's movements. A promotional notice signals a brief transition while Karin continues to manipulate the red-haired boy's mind. Karin imprints commands on Morgan's subconscious, forcing him to stay close to Lady Eri's side. Karin orders Morgan to neutralize threats to Eri and warns him against ever harming her. Morgan is ordered to discard the coffee, while he pathetically insists that it is only coffee. Karin demands that Morgan always obey Eri, leaving the red-haired boy in a dazed state. Morgan lets out a confused, incoherent sound as Karin's mental influence takes a firm hold. The boy suddenly snaps to attention, his eyes wide and vacant as his memories are warped. Morgan sits in a daze while Karin reflects on the effectiveness of his memory-warping brainwashing. Karin clutches his head, enduring a sharp headache from the strain of manipulating another's mind. Narrative text reveals Karin's awakened ability, the power to distort physical space and human memory. Ethereal butterflies flutter through the darkness, signifying the mystical and dangerous nature of Karin's power. Karin recalls his past helplessness, once believing his weak power could never change his circumstances. The blue-haired boy gazes at his hand, realizing his ability is actually a potent tool. Karin acknowledges his current lack of control, but sees his power's potential for the future. The boy resolves to use his distortion ability to grow stronger and repay his debt. In the classroom, the students surprise their teacher by responding with sudden, impeccable politeness. The instructor is flabbergasted by the children's transformation and their sudden use of respectful honorifics. Eri sits quietly, pleased that her efforts to discipline the class have been so successful. As Eri purifies the class, she notices her own spiritual power levels have increased significantly. Morgan eagerly raises his hand, shouting for the teacher's attention with a strange, wide-eyed enthusiasm. Other students mock Morgan's bizarre behavior while he angrily tells them to be quiet. A chibi depiction shows Irie acting as a tiny, chaotic force of nature within the classroom. Irie observes Karin, noting that his once dark eyes now sparkle with newfound passion and determination. Other half-blood children are shown flourishing and studying hard in the academy's improved environment. Eri receives a weekly notice from the teacher, realizing a major academy event is approaching. The young lady is visibly shocked as she reads the announcement for parent-teacher observation classes. Narrative text highlights the rugged nature of Northern children, known for their wild and resilient spirits. Text explains that the Northern upbringing focuses on traditional methods to help children survive harsh conditions. An official academy announcement declares the upcoming observation class as one of the school's vital events. Irie looks down at the notice, feeling a sense of trepidation about the coming parent visit. Eri enters the office after being summoned, greeting her teacher with polite and standard etiquette. The teacher acknowledges Irie's presence and prepares to discuss the details of the upcoming observation. The instructor explains that tomorrow's observation class will be a significant challenge for all the students. Irie looks startled as she hears that Lord Declan has not confirmed his attendance. The teacher explains it would be wonderful if Lord Declan could join the parents. Airily nervously fidgets with her fingers, wondering how to approach the busy Grand Duke. The young girl pouts as she considers how occupied the Lord must be lately. Irie rushes away, insisting it is fine even if he does not attend the class. A tiny chibi Irie runs down the wide wooden floor of the academy hallway. Eri continues her hurried pace, her face set in a look of quiet, internal struggle. fading text reflects on a past memory that seems to be repeating itself once again.
Irie recalls the time she attempted to invite her father to a previous school event.
In a flashback, her father dismisses her invitation, telling her to ask her grandmother instead.
Aerie shakes her head vigorously to clear away the stinging memories of her father's rejection.
Internal thoughts note that the busy Grand Duke has no time for school observation classes.
Cookie asks if she is truly fine with the situation, and Aerie insists she is.
Irie decides she should avoid being a burden while looking at her small school bag.
The scene shifts to the Grand Academy building where a crowd is beginning to gather.
A group of stern, high-ranking parents stands together, their expressions serious and somewhat intimidating.
An older man with graying hair leads the group of parents toward the observation room. He notes the full attendance, wondering if everyone else noticed the strange changes in behavior.
A red-haired man agrees, remarking that no one could fail to notice such drastic transformations.
The older man aggressively demands to know exactly what happened to change his child's personality.
An ornate frame announces that every family attended the school's observation class for once.
Narrative text explains that parents were motivated by the unbelievable changes they saw at home.
A boy who once lazed around now greets his father with perfect, respectful etiquette.
A mother watches in shock as her daughter uncharacteristically tidies up her own bedroom.
Another parent is stunned to find their once rowdy child quietly focused on reading a book.
Credits Aerie for transforming the children into well-mannered individuals for the very first time.
The gray-haired father struggles to hide his pride and joy behind a fierce, shouting exterior. He remains convinced that something significant must have occurred at the academy to cause this.
The teacher enters the classroom and announces that the parents have already arrived for class.
Chibi heads of the parents burn with a fiery determination to solve the children's mystery.
Aerie sits at her desk and happily waves to her grandmother among the visiting relatives.
Lord Declan sits alone at a long table, wondering why the room is so empty.
An aide enters the room, looking surprised to see the Grand Duke still sitting there.
Declan realizes with frustration that everyone took leave, leaving him with a mountain of paperwork.
The aide looks through a folder, realizing an important piece of news was not shared.
The aide informs the Grand Duke that the Academy is currently hosting a parent-teacher class.
Declan stares blankly at the aide, processing the news that he was never told about.